Move approval with the addition of 4.1 and 6.3.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Seconder?
Yep. Second.
Sean, all in favor? Carried. Okay, minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Receipt of committee minutes?
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Recommend that council receive the 2020 audited financial statements report and that council receive the delegation of Corey Vanderhorst, CPA, CA Louise Bloom, a CPA from MNP LLP to present the auditor's report for the council of the year ending December 31st, 2020.
Receipt.
Move receipt, seconder.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll just quickly introduce the financial statements that were prepared by management. They're attached to your council report. And just a quick note that council is responsible for the review and acceptance of the financial statements, and approval of those statements need to take place before May 15th of each year. So the financial statements for the year December 31st, 2020 were prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for local government. And the audit firm of MNP was appointed by council to perform the independent audit for the 2020 year. And with us to present their audit findings tonight is Corey Vanderhorst and Louise Blomer. And before we get to that though, there is a list of the financial statements in the package on page 17 of your agenda. Council will recognize some of these from your quarterly reports. There's the statement of financial position, your statement of operations accumulated surplus, and your statement of changes in net assets. So you see those regularly. But for the audited financial statements, you'll also see your cash flows and how that flows through the statements. And then also there's some significant supplementary information to the financial statements with the notes. So that provides actually a lot of the information for you. Then you have all your schedules that are attached to the financial statements. And so you're going to see information on your assets in those schedules, your debt. And then you're also going to see the various types of municipal services in the segmented information provided to you in those schedules. My council report gives you a bit more information on your accumulated surplus, your annual surplus, and your net financial assets in addition to those statements. And I can answer some questions for you, or you can just hold off and wait for the auditors to present their audit findings and their audit report, and we can answer anything at the end. But what I'm just looking for after the auditors have presented to you tonight is for council approval of the financial statements. So I'll introduce Corey and Louise for their presentation. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hello, everyone. Mayor and Council, thank you for having me here today. I do have a few slides. I'm going to attempt to share, make sure hopefully this works. There we go. So I will take you through highlights of the financials and a few things about our audit. I'm happy to answer some questions at the end. I will note that I can only see about 4 or 5 of you at the moment, so I apologize if you're frantically waving your hand and have a question, but hopefully we can do that at the end. I'll start off with a big thank you to Michelle and your team at the village office for helping with the audit. Another year of not as much on site as we had done, sharing information electronically and safely through our secure client portal. And when we need to be on site, making sure we have the right pandemic safety protocols in place so that your team and our team were as safe as possible. Thank you for helping with everything there, Michelle. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of highlights of the financial statements. And Michelle had a little bit of highlights in her report to council there as well. Our audit report is in draft stage, the final step tonight being approval by council, mayor and council of the financial statements. And we are also waiting for one minor piece of information to come back before we can release our audit report. Happy to say it's another clean audit opinion for the village, that we are satisfied that the financial statements are not materially misstated in accordance with the public sector accounting standards. And then I'll talk a little bit about our audit process and end with some financial analysis. So a reminder that we're looking on a consolidated basis. Throughout the year, you might be getting information that is just general fund or water, but this is looking at everything all together, including the reserves and the capital transactions. If you take a look at your balance sheet, your statement of financial position, a snapshot at the end of the year, you can see some very healthy cash and investments, up from 13.4 to $18.4 million. Total financial assets, cash, accounts receivable, likewise up from 14 to 19. So about a $5 million increase there. Debt being carried by the village has increased as well, from 4.5 to 6.1. So I think there's about a $2 million debt issue incurred during the year, and then pay down of other debt. Total liabilities are up from 11.9 to 17.8. So you can see that that's more than just the debt. There's also some increases in timing of payables at year end, and some deferred revenue amounts coming in for some of the larger projects that are going to be happening in 2021 on the capital side. So the net financial assets, it was $2.7 million in 2019. It's 1.7, so about $1 million decrease, primarily with the new debt incurred and some of those deferred revenue amounts that are going to be used in 2021. On the tangible capital asset side, quite an increase here from 58 million to 63.8. So some significant projects throughout the year on the capital side, and a large land purchase as well during the year. I believe just over $2 million. So large increase in the asset values. And then the accumulated surplus also increases from 61 million to 65. You can see that most of that accumulated surplus number is the assets, and you take off the associated debt, you get about 57 million of the 65 is in physical assets. The rest of the accumulated surplus I'll show you on a future slide. Moving then to the income statement, or the statement of operations. You know, as you would expect in this pandemic year, some things are up, some things are down, lots of movement. Total revenues actually ended the year about 314,000 higher than the prior year. So the provincial restart grant went a long way towards making up some of the recreation and other funding that had dipped away. There are some donations toward that land purchase that brought your income back up to a very similar level to 2019. On the expense side, actually, you know, because it crosses over that 6.9, it looks like it, but it's only about a $27,000 increase. So all things being considered, that is a good cost containment. We know that some things like recreation and other functions of the village would have been very impacted by the pandemic, but a very flat on the expenses side. And the annual surplus, as a result, then a small increase of 277,000 to 4.6 million. The statement of changes in net financial assets, the really key thing to note here is here you had some subdivision contributions coming online in 2019, but none of that in 2020. That's really just a timing thing of when the developers are finishing up their projects. But purchases, you can see here, went from just under 4 million to 7.3 million. So a large increase there in capital activity throughout 2020. The cash flows, because that income statement is not all cash transactions, this is an important one to look at, Operationally, almost $10.7 million of cash flow in. So this includes that restart grant that would not have been budgeted for. This includes those donations towards purchasing the land. Capital, again, large capital outlays for the year of 7.3 million. A net transfer out of investments into the regular cash accounts, general bank accounts of 56,000. And financing, I mentioned about a $2 million increase in debt minus $350,000 of payment on schedule. So your net cash inflow to the main bank accounts was $5,078,000 for 2020. And I think the last slide on the numbers is that accumulated surplus number is 55.7. So I mentioned 57 million of that is tied up in your physical assets, right? That's roads, water, sewer, buildings, land, things you can touch and feel. And then you've got $5.9 million in reserves. So you've put about $350,000 increase into the reserve accounts, which is a positive thing. And the operating fund is holding fairly steady, about $155,000 increase in the operating fund. Moving then to the audit side of things. So an unqualified opinion, I mentioned off the top that it's auditor speak for a clean audit opinion. We're ready to sign the report, just need council approval, a few signed pages back, and I think we're waiting for one lawyer to get back to us about any legal matters that they might be working on for the village. Our audit, we do a few things. We look at controls in place to make sure that we're comfortable that you're getting accurate financial results in the financial statements. We sampled transactions throughout the year. We don't look at everything. So we use materiality to generate our samples and drive how much audit testing we're gonna do. For the current year, materiality was set at 375,000. So that's just a little bit shy of 4% of your annual revenues for the year. In the engagement status, we didn't find anything unusual, any irregularities, no evidence of conflict of interest or illegal or questionable payments. We are not specifically fraud investigators when we're putting together a financial statement audit, but if anything came to our attention, we would have to bring them to the council's attention. So this is a no news is good news type of statement there. Again, a thank you to staff and management at the village for all their help with the audit this year. I do confirm the MMP is independent with respect to the, all CPAs doing audits has to follow this code of professional conduct. Can't do any other projects with the village that would impair that independence. So right from January 1st, 2020 through to today, no other projects that we were doing for the village. And then I'll wrap up with a little bit of financial analysis. So we like to look at, we just looked at that last year, 2020. So then we start to look at, okay, let's look at the last 5 years and some trends and some ratios and where is the village moving maybe. So we start with this sustainability ratio, and we're looking at your financial assets to your liabilities. It's kind of a rough liquid analysis of how much do you have available for the future costs. So this ratio, we really look at the number 1. If you're higher than 1, it means you have some resources put aside to pay for future projects. If you start dipping below 1, you get into a net debt position. It means you are taxing or using debt financing or some sort of funding in the future to pay for the past. So you're currently at 1.1. It's been decreasing. It was, if you go back 4 years ago, it was about 1.3. So as you take on more debt, that number is dropping. We saw that when the net financial asset position went from 2.7 to 1.7 million. It's not a bad thing. It's just a trend in the direction that the village has been going with some big capital projects and things that needed debt financing. This ratio is also impacted by some of those deferred revenues that are sitting there for 2021 projects. Then we look at flexibility. So we know that on top of providing services, you are also managing a large capital base. You've got a lot of infrastructure to take care of. So this looks at the rough aging of your physical assets. So this takes the original cost when you built things or bought them and compares it to what's the depreciated value, the estimated usage over time. So the carrying value is about 72.7%. That's consistent with last year's 72.1. this has actually been trending upwards. So as the village has had, the sort of inverse of what I was just talking about with incurring debt is you're adding to the infrastructure, you are doing replacement, you're doing all those projects to keep the capital assets maintained, and therefore this ratio has been climbing slowly for the last 5 years. And maybe this might be the last item. I'm sure there's one more after this, but the last one we look at here is vulnerability. So here we are looking at, you've got tax revenues, you've got other sources of funding, recreation revenues and user fees, and then you've got external funding, government transfers, whether it's from the federal government or the provincial government. And we look at what's the ratio of government transfer to your total revenue. Tends to bounce around. It's been as low as 20%, as high as 35% for the last 5 years, often tied into those large capital projects. One of the things that we saw this year with the Restart grant and some of the other projects you have coming online is it's about 21.7%. So it's towards the low end, but you might see increases depending on some of the government grant funding that's going to start rolling through over the next few years as some of that economic development, infrastructure development money is flowing into communities. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I'm going to stop the sharing so I can see everybody. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the audit or the financial statements, anything that council wishes to ask.
Any members of council, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. That was great. I feel like it was not a year ago that you were here. Was it a year? It was a fully a year. Okay.
No,
so
I don't. I think it was not a year. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 months.
Okay, thank you. I was like, why are we?
Yeah, we're doing it again. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious about is there a sort of ideal debt to asset ratio for municipalities of our size, and are they based? Is that ideal ratio based on the size of municipality or other specific measures, or what? How does that work?
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Yeah, it's a good question. Every community has a little bit different needs, or has either stayed on top of capital needs or not stayed on top of. So there's no magic number for looking at that debt to assets. I think trying to stay above that 1-to-1 mark or balancing around there. Debt is not bad in and of itself. It's what are you doing with it, and what services are you providing, or what capital infrastructure that is needed for the community is being built for future generations. So there's no magic number. We have some clients and communities that we're working with that are very much into net debt positions, but needed to do either large water treatment plants or large wastewater treatment plants. Those are, those can be incredibly expensive these days. And the reality is that if you're going to keep up the quality of life of the residents, that they're needed. So I think that it goes into that long range plan. The question of what's the right number is that what are you staring at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now that is, if there's a big capital maintenance thing that has to happen, right? You have to replace a piece of the infrastructure. That's where you would build into what's the right number for right now. Because being at about 1.1 on the net financial assets is good. But if you've got a $10 million capital project in 5 years, you need to build to that somehow. It's tough to rely on grant funding on everything because year by year it can change of what's available. And then balancing out tax versus debt is also the next piece of what do you have in reserves, and what do you want to incur for debt?
Yeah, and so similarly with the vulnerability, what is that? Was there like a suggested best rate to be at?
That 20% that you've kind of been running and hitting seems to be about par, and then you bounce up when there's capital. Where I would be concerned is if you're hitting in the 40-50% or higher, because then what it tells me is if you're consistently that high, you're over reliant on another level of government, and that's a tough spot to be, because if a provincial government or a federal government changes, then you can run the risk of the tap shutting off, and that's the one where you have to balance that self-reliance and what you can tax versus those levels. So a lot of the communities that I work with bounce around that 20% and then up to 30 or 40 when there's large capital projects. So I don't think that that is necessarily an indicator of any concern for the village.
Great, thank you.
Any other member of council? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, thanks, Corey, for the presentation, and just sort of following on that conversation. You know, we have done a lot of capital infrastructure projects, our new drinking water facility, our wastewater facility, and of course the new fire hall. We were able to get large grants for the water and for sewer, but we weren't able to get grants for the fire hall. And I think that's one of the things that's really taken us down as far as our debt ratios there. And we still have a long way to go. You know, looking at our facilities plans, we have a lot of our buildings well beyond their useful life. And so, you know, for public works and our civic buildings and the recreation center, these are all things that are still left outstanding that we need to deal with. So, so we definitely are treading a fine line, I think, there at our 1.1% on the debt ratio. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. We certainly are reliant on upper levels of government to help us with our infrastructure. So I hope that that continues for years to come, or else we certainly will run into some issues with meeting our demands for new buildings, civic buildings and rec centers and all of those fun things.
Yeah, if I may, it's a great point. You know, there's a federal budget coming, I think, next week. That's something to keep a keen eye on. And the question that, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but Councillor Kettler, you make a great point that the sewer and the water tend to get funded, but some of the other stuff doesn't. And it's that tough mix of, you know, a rec center or a fire hall, as you said, is if the money is earmarked for certain projects, then it's harder to find that grant funding. So that's very much a reality. And coming out of the pandemic, where the money will go is going to be interesting. That is something that, again, pay attention to that budget next week. I expect there may be some interesting things in there for municipalities.
The other members of council, do you have anything you'd like to ask? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam
Great
Mayor.
presentation. And I'm glad, I'm always glad to hear positive comments about our staff. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
So what is your pleasure, council? The motion is there.
That council approve the Village of Cumberland's audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Spruill, all in favor? Carried. Is that what you needed, Michelle?
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving along. Thank you very much. Next, we have go into delegations. That council received the delegation of Inspector Mike Curvers, OIC, RCMP, Comox Valley Detachment Community Priority Issues for Annual Performance Plan Priorities. Motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Second. In favor? Carried. Welcome, Mike. Nice to see you.
Hello, everyone.
Greetings.
I'll try and be brief as I can be. So I've started sending those quarterly reports to Mayor and Council just to give you some idea what the calls for service are in the communities. So yours is specific to Cumberland, obviously. So I'll go through that quickly, and then I'll give you some stats on what your priorities are, because that is kind of an internal document with the RCMP. And then we can discuss the priorities you want to table this year. So if you go to that report, excuse me if I look away because I gotta look at my notes. So if you read the report to council there, last year, or 2019, there were 766 calls for service. So I want to clarify calls for service. Those are actual actual calls that were called into our office. So it's not the proactive stuff. So these are actually called people calling in. So in 2019, you had 766. So last year, I did January to December because that's what most people's fiscal years are. Ours is April to April, so it gives it a little bit of discrepancy. That's why you see the 3 months on 2021, because that's our timelines. So last year you had 710, so 56 less calls over a year, which works out to 7%, which is not a whole lot in my books. It's 50 calls, that's peanuts. So I'll break it down a little bit further here. So I'm just going to scroll down. You can see, if you look at this type of number of files, it's all pretty even. Everything's pretty much the same from month to month. Some months are a little higher, but that's pretty average for what happens throughout the year, as you can see. So for traffic, again, in 2019, there was 83 traffic related files that we responded to. In 2020, there was 86. So there's 3 more over the calendar year, which is, again, it's not significant. And then right now we are 10 files less than what the fourth quarter was the year before. And these are the usual, the speeding complaints, the ATVs, the motorcycles, the things that we're trying to respond to that we have some difficulty with because we're not allowed to pursue anybody, as you know. Break and enters, there was 20 in 2019. There's 20 again in 2020. And for just this quarter, we have 2, which is not a whole lot from a policing perspective. I might mean a whole lot for the community, but from us, it's not that significant. Thefts from vehicle, again, there was 30 in 2019 and then 13 in 2020. And I can't tell you why we have a decrease there. And I can't tell you why there's an increase and decrease in certain types of files or instances. It could be a number of things, population, COVID, people getting released from the gallows, coming back to the community and things like that. So theft from motor vehicle, again, it's not a whole lot. There's 3 there. This just for January, February, March, there's only 3. And overall, you can see there's not a whole lot of that happening in your community. Assaults, I thought I'd add some of these because these are the ones that most communities want to know about because they're significant files and they impact our investigations. So there's 22 in 2019, 13 in 2020, and right now we're at 4. So those are anything from common assault to assault with a weapon. So there's different classifications, and depending on what the severity of the file is, then it gets categorized in different categories. Sexual offenses, those are the sex assaults and related offenses. There's 5 in Cumberland in 2019. There was 7 last year, and right now we are at 3. We get a significant number of files from our ICE team, which is our Integrated Child Exploitation Unit out of E Division and Ottawa. They monitor a lot of stuff, so we get a lot of historical stuff that we need to investigate. That's internet type investigations where child luring, child exploitation, all those related images, that we get a lot of that. So we have to really follow up on that stuff. And that takes time because there's usually an IP address and there's some kind of computer component to it. And we have to identify somebody and kind of work our investigation that way. So I'm going to use the term child pornography. That's kind of a big ticket item, and it takes a lot of our time, and it's prevalent throughout Canada. There's a fair bit of that going on right now. And we are trying to track that as best we can. It's unfortunate. And the next one is domestic violence, and that's usually it could be between partners, husband and wife, different scenarios. So in 2019, you had 23 domestic files. Last year, you had 14, which is a decrease of 9. Right now, we're sitting at 0s in the community of Cumberland, which is good. So that kind of gives you the type of calls of service we kind of deal with on a routine basis. These are the ones we respond to. Again, there's other ones. I want to reiterate that we prioritize our calls from 1 to 4. So 1s and 2s are going to get responses right away. 3 and 4s are less severe. They can be followed up later on. So if you don't see a policeman right away, which is usually the complaint with individuals, they don't see a policeman right away. It's not that we don't take individual complaints seriously. It's just we have to prioritize and we have to get to the more serious things first. And then our dispatchers kind of screen those calls as well to try and clarify what they're actually calling about. So that's part of the process. So I'm going to talk about your priorities from last year. So first I'm going to go into, there's 6 of them you, 5, pardon me, you identified last year. Crime reduction, community relations, watercraft safety, traffic, and parks and campgrounds. So with the road safety, COVID-19 obviously has an impact on this, but I can tell you there was 23 criminal code investigations in the community. And I'm talking globally in Comox Valley now, and it's not specific to your community because we have a lot of different factors coming in because some of the other communities will have the same priority. So we kind of tabulate those scores that way because that's how my reporting process is. So there's 23 criminal code and we had 694 contacts with individuals. And that could be traffic contacts or pulling over for speeding, cell phone, seat belts. With the criminal code, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot, but when we deal with people with driving violations, we have a good thing called vehicle impound. So we can impound vehicles for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And that has more of an impact than trying to work through the criminal code process because that's an immediate impact. They got to pay for impound. They got to pay for the storage fees. It affects their license. Then they got to pay for points. They got to pay for the license. So there's a real financial impact when we do it that way. And that seems to resonate better with individuals than actually just standing in front of a judge. So crime reduction, prolific offenders. We've had very good luck in the community. If you read the Comox Valley record, we raided, if I can use the word raid. We did a search warrant on that house on 20th, 1655 20th. We had 19 individuals in there. And every one of them is known to us. So we're working with Courtney and with the regional district to deal with some of these nuisance properties and work through that. So you don't have any of that. So we don't have to really work on that, but we do have processes where we can deal with this kind of scenarios. So I got crime reduction, community relations. So this is our community relations, this is Zoom. Because of COVID, we don't really have a lot of face-to-faces anymore. So we're trying to keep up with communications and emails and phone calls. That way we keep ourselves apprised of any needs and wants. Enhanced water safety. So that's more of a summer initiative for the lake. We usually put a boat on the lake during the summer and have our contacts that way. It worked very well. We had, in 4 months, we had 61 contacts, which is specific to your community. And a fair number of those people got some violation tickets for various offenses under the Water Act. I'm making that up, by the way. Again, visibility in parks and campgrounds. We do that routinely. We're still doing that now. And then we're again to enhancing road safety through off-road vehicles. Again, very challenging priority because a lot of times the ATVs and the people on the motorbikes take off on us and we're not allowed to chase those people or pursue. So without somebody actually seeing who's behind the mask, it's very difficult to pursue those. And again, we need witnesses have to step up, and a lot of times they're reluctant to do that. And it's no fault on them. They just don't want to get involved to that level and take care of that part of it. I think that's it for your priorities. So I can open up to questions and then we can talk about the priorities.
Okay. Yes, I'll agree that let's talk about the initial report. I have one question and it's called about the break and enters, and that is down. Do you think it's because more people are working from home nowadays?
Yeah, that could be attributed to that. More people are home and they're basically security guards of their own property.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Sproul, your microphone.
That right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I'm always listen with interest to what's going on here. There seems to be cycles, and it used to be that there was repeat offenders in the neighborhood that had just come out of some kind of detention center, and there'd be a lot of troubles while they were still out, but once they were gone back, then things calmed down. That was particularly true of our neighborhood down here on the Comox Lake Road. So do you find more of that, like groups of repeat offenders that, or another question is, do people come from outside of the community to break and enter? I'm just curious to know what kind of people.
I'm going to say yes to both. So we see a marked decrease in offenses when we have certain, and this comes under the prolific offender management we do. We have people we identify and we try and stay on top of them. And if they do a rash of beanies or whatever they're doing, we kind of get on top of it and we try and process them. With the state of affairs right now with the courts and detention centers, it's more challenging for us to keep people actually in prison or in jail to do some time, I guess, if you want to call it that. Like for a lot of people who are prolific offenders will end up on bail conditions, like not go Walmart, not go Superstore, not go here, not go there. There's just all sorts of conditions put on them. And well, they breach all the time because that's where they're going there to shoplift, to get their meal and to get their items, right? So it's very difficult to challenge that. So we need to do a whole number of breach charges for Crown and the courts to recognize that it's not they're not doing anything. It's just they want accumulation of these things because one takes a bit of time. So if they have like 10 or 12 of these in a pile, it's more likely that the individual is going to agree to some of the conditions and the charges and going away for a while to take care of this because it's cumulative then, right? So they deal with everything at once and get a clean slate right away. So with the second question, we're seeing an increase in individuals coming to the community from out of town. Comox Valley, God bless it, has very good social services, but it does bring some problems for the policing side because with their own international network of communication, they find out that they can get food and they get lodging, they can get sleeping bags, they get everything they need here in the community, which is good at a certain level, but it does bring the other component with it. So the individuals that are starting to come here are the ones that are usually in trouble in those other communities, and they start the trouble here.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same with even Powell River and some of the others, because we have the main mental health facility here, the hospital. A lot of these individuals are coming here for a bed or for treatment, and then they're released here at the hospital. Now they're in our community. So we have to deal with those individuals because hey, this is a nice place. I'm going to stay here.
Well, it's interesting. Just like the rest of the world that is non-criminal, everybody is drawn to Vancouver Island. Temperatures,
well, absolutely.
Weather. Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say it's a little bit disturbing for us to know that we have such an attraction. But anyway. So.
I will say that our bike unit are very engaged. That's part of their mandate is the kind of the homeless population and dealing with those kind of individuals. And I'm going to say the travel lodge, because we have a lot of our clients in the travel lodge, and that's a kind of a Courtney issue. But it's one-stop shopping for us because we know where everybody is. So it's kind of handy that way. But it's very difficult because there is that trickle effect when people kind of congregate in a place like the travel lodge because they have their own hierarchy in the travel lodge because they have their pimps, their drug dealers, their drug users, their prostitutes, the thieves. So they got their own hierarchy.
That's reassuring or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Well, thanks for all that information.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks for your report, Inspector Curvers. Nice to see you again. I'll just keep it brief. I know your favorite street must be Kendall Avenue. I haven't heard much recently about it, but I did find that last time when we really begged you to go and try to get some speeding down, that there was a lot of traction. I know that when you spent the time there the last time, it really made an effect. So all I would really ask is maybe that you guys do another visit and maybe do just like a 2-time visit. So like one time and then go a couple weeks later just to sort of everybody know that you're kind of watching them, because yeah, it seemed to get some traction last time. Other than that, it's really hard that everything is going down. All the numbers are going down, so that's really nice.
Good, and I'm glad to hear that. There is a bit of a glitch in this plan, though. Lynn West, I don't know if anybody knew Lynn West. She's been in the community for a long time. She was our reservist and a big component of Kendall Avenue. Her and her husband just moved back east. She is now retired the second time. So she's moved on. She was a big component. She worked for us a couple of days a week and did a lot of enforcement in the community. Corporal Matchett has moved on to Golden. So he was our traffic guy, but we have good people coming back. So Brad Landers has taken on that mantle of the traffic, and he's doing a very good job. So he's got to learn the position, but he's doing quite well. I will make sure he puts Kendall Ave on his list of priorities, and that he can go there. Some of the other individuals that have been off duty sick for a couple of weeks are coming back. So we're going to get that full component again with the unit, and then we'll try and do all those initiatives that the communities want.
That's great to hear. Thanks.
Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I want to follow up with the traffic issues in my neighborhood and on Kendall. So the numbers that you came up with for last year and this year, I think you said were 86 and 83. And is that just simply proportional to the amount of time that you're able to be in the community?
Yeah. So we, our calls for service is, if it's a calls for service and the traffic team is not around, then our general duty policing officers will go there. I know there's a few of our officers that live in your community on Kendall and in that area. So they're well aware, and we try and kind of work through that. So the big thing is we need to know. And it's the same story. You need to report these things. You might think that traffic is not a big issue, but we can tabulate all that information, and we can kind of prioritize, and we can call it a hotspot, or we can target that area, and we can put some enforcement in that area. But we need the kind of the backup statistics and information to kind of do that. So yes, it's maybe a bit of a nuisance to have someone call us, but it's good for us because we record the stats, and we create files. We put on, if someone calls in, can we have extra patrols in such and such a street? That goes on our daily report. So every member reads that when they come on shift. So they're aware that they need to go to those areas.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if you guys give communities those speed boards, and if those numbers were being documented, would that help with the speeding issue in our community?
I can't see why not. I think that's we're talking about the signs that gives you a happy face or a sad face when you're speeding. Yeah, I'm not sure who organizes that. Is that I don't know if that's MOTI, but that definitely helps. It reduces the speed, right?
The village owns one of those.
Is it the ones you put on a pole, or is it on wheels?
It's on a pole.
Okay. It's very helpful.
We have a lot of trouble with it.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anyone jump up after I said that, so maybe.
No one was volunteering to fix it, I see.
Yeah.
Pretty sure one of those. Oh.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. That was my question too. That so to be clear, the traffic number, the 86, is just when it's not calls that you're receiving from us, from people. It's actual tickets that are being given out when someone's in the community.
86 traffic files, those are actual calls for service.
Okay.
Right. So when I mentioned 694, those are actual tickets and contacts. And I didn't break it down into community because that's generalized for Comox Valley. The other part of that story is there's North Island Traffic Services and URSU, which is our other two traffic units. They don't report to this office. They're a district asset, and they come to your community as well. So they're usually the ones sitting at your four-way stop.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I
That,
don't get those stats. So those stats are recorded somewhere else. The office is actually in Camel River. So there is other enforcement going on in your community that doesn't really relate to this office.
Can we ask them to go to Kendall?
I can ask them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
great.
Sounds like a joke.
So Staff Sergeant Kevin Quayle is his office is in Camel River. And he is the man in charge of the traffic services, North Island Traffic Services, which is basically our freeway patrol. So they have designated areas they go to. They call them LKIs, which is, if I can remember the acronym, I could tell you, but basically it's the roads that they're supposed to patrol. So Highway 19, 19A, some of the main thoroughfares in your community are recorded as traffic zones that they should patrol. So 4th Ave and 5th Ave and Dunsmir, I think, is part of that.
What about the Comox Lake Road where I live, which has now become a traffic nightmare since COVID?
Yeah.
Speeding and excessive parking. That's not a good mix.
No, and that's where we're going to do that enforcement again this year and try and get that sorted out. That's part of the initiative with the priorities. So it is a challenge. Again, it's resource driven. We can't be there all the time. We try and get there as much as we can. Our bike guys, well, even with that office that we're going to occupy, the guys can ride their bikes along the road.
Yeah, and go into the mountains.
Yeah, so that's going to be beneficial. So
Great.
having space there, then they can park and they can ride their bicycles around and do some enforcement that way as well.
Cool.
Okay, so we can, yes.
Thank
I
you.
didn't get to finish my question, sorry.
Okay.
So I very much appreciate the water monitoring out at the lake. That's great, and thanks to Councillor Sproul for reiterating the Lake Road problem that is the weekends in the summer. So yeah, anything you can do out there would be great. A couple of things. So we have a dramatic increase in the number of vehicles coming to Cumberland to access the trails, which is lovely, but some of them park in the most bizarre ways. And we don't have bylaw enforcement on the weekend. Is that part of traffic? Like if someone's out here doing traffic and they drive by the parking lot and there's someone with the back end of their vehicle sticking out behind a stop sign on a corner, is that something that is getting addressed?
Well, we have a really easy solution that we always say that car looks better on a hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
So should we be encouraging people who are seeing that sort of thing to call a tow truck or to report it to you guys? How are we to deal with that?
We have to come and kind of assess it,
Yeah.
right? So that Comox Lake Road, is that MOTI? Is that private? Who owns that road?
The village does out to, almost out to the lake.
Okay. That we put signage up about no parking. Is that there as well?
Yes.
No,
there is
so what I'm referring to actually is so a lot of the parking that happens is, I'm pointing because it's outside my house, is at the four-way stop at the bottom of Egremont and Dunsmir outside the CRI parking. Yeah. And so people park along, well, wherever they can there.
Yeah.
And many times I know there's a certain distance from the stop sign that you're supposed to not park so that people can see around the corner when they're trying to make a turn. And that is a consistently parked in spot right there. So just wondering if you can add that to your list of things
We do that. So
thank you.
For the bylaws, I'm not familiar with all of them. Is there a parking bylaw?
No. But we'll get there soon, someday.
It'll be very beneficial because with that, we have the ability to write bylaw tickets because officers, because we have that authority.
Yeah.
So you have municipal tickets and you have if you have an enforceable bylaw parking bylaw, basically, then we can actually implement that. Right.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is I did read in the paper about the house ill repute, let's call it. We do have some of those houses with known illegal activity in the village. And what should we be advising people to do about that? Should we be calling it in? What do we do?
Is this the same house as before? Over on,
Well, that's one of them, but there are other houses that are known to be having illegal activity.
yeah, send me the addresses and then I'll put somebody on it.
Thank you.
Like, I would like to thank you very
have a-
much. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going, do you have a nuisance abatement bylaw?
Nuisance abatement bylaw.
Get one of those too.
So I would, I don't know if you know Kate O'Connell, she's one of the new city managers at Courtney. She's kind of spearheaded this for the city of Courtney. I would tap into her knowledge because they just incorporated the nuisance abatement bylaw.
Oh, that's how you got them on the other.
So that's, that house on 20th is now part of that process. So every time the police show up and fire show up, the individual who owns that property gets billed.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. I would like to add that thank you very much, Mike, for last year for the problems out at the lake and people camping on this side of the road. It was a huge issue in some areas. And my understanding is a possibility of it even being more this year. For some reason, people from the cities think they can bring their vans and just park anywhere they like and camp. And so I'm expecting more reports of this going on. It's all actually already started in the village. People are bringing their vans here and just staying wherever they feel like in the need for the night. So that is going to be an issue.
Yeah, no, we're seeing that we're preparing for that. Just like Denman and Hornby, they're going to have the same issue with the domestic tourism, with people just parking and camping anywhere they feel like they want to. We're past the education phase for COVID-19. Our office has taken, we were doing a lot of education and giving people benefit of doubt and talking to them and trying to educate them about the different enforcement issues with the COVID-19 rules. But we're taking a stronger stance from now on, mainly because of some churches and some other people doing some things that, you give them a couple chances and it's, 3 strikes and you're out. So we'll be taking some more enforcement action in those areas. So we definitely, if we run in those scenarios, we're definitely going to consider a violation ticket if it's warranted.
Okay, thank you. Now, you see the number of items that we've highlighted. Do council want those items to remain the same for this coming time frame? If everybody is in agreement, then there is a motion there to move.
Okay, so if you want to keep all the same ones, I can send you this acknowledgement to you, Mayor Baird, and then you can just sign off and send it back to me.
Okay, council tonight has to give me the ability to sign off on it.
Okay.
I'll move that council, where we go? I'll move that council authorize the mayor to approve the acknowledgement of this consultation.
Thank you.
We need to list the things, no?
Oh, with the RE.
With the same 5. We could just say the same 5.
I think that's I can say that if one.
Yeah. Okay, seconder. All in favor? Carrie. Thank you once again, Mike. Very thorough and interesting information. And I think our staff is going to be a little busy.
Yeah, so for those houses, just send me the addresses and I'll see what we can do with that. And matter of fact, if anything comes up, just fire me an email and I'll see if I can direct it to the right people to get you some action.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
You too.
Okay, next, that council received the presentation from Russell Dyson, Chief Administrative Officer, and Kevin DeVale, Manager of Financial Planning, regarding the Comox Valley Regional District Financial Plan Report.
No receipt.
Seconder, all in favor? Carried. Welcome, gentlemen. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I'm just waiting to see if Russell accidentally popped off. Oh, there he is.
No, he's here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Barrett, Council, staff, and
He's frozen.
thank you. And just to give you the heads up, I'm connecting rural. Take over.
Oh, did he freeze?
Yes, he did.
And can you hear me, Mayor Barrett?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we're here to give a bit of a presentation regarding the Comox Valley Regional District's financial plan, which is now adopted as of March 31st. And it will set in place the taxes and tolls that we'll charge, but the work plan for your community and the rest of the Comox Valley. I'll just talk to you a little bit about what a regional district is, and Kevin. So a regional district is a service provider to our rural areas. It is the way that we provide services like street lighting, water systems, and such to our electoral areas, and we have 3 of those. It is also the means and ways in which we can partner with our participants and provide services to a number of our participants, be it municipalities and rural areas. But we can also partner with other regional districts, such as the Strathcona Regional District, as we do for the solid waste service. And finally, your regional government is a lobby. It is a means to put forward regional issues to senior levels of government. Regional districts, there's 27 across the province of BC. They're all very unique because they all determine what services they provide, and there's a formal process before we establish any service. Next slide, please. Are sewer, water, solid waste, transit. Cumberland does not participate in all of our services, but those are the ones that take the most of our time or otherwise. And that's the unique nature of regional districts. Not all participants need to participate in all services. And Cumberland is well aware of that, not having to decided to participate in some things that you decide you can manage better on your own. Next slide, please, Kevin. Overall, the regional district provides 98, and those services each must be managed separately and independently. We have to have a separate budget for each one. The revenues that we raise for each individual service remain within that service, and the assets for that service remain there. So it's a unique situation where Kevin and his team are developing 98 separate financial statements and budgets. But not all 98 services are provided. The majority of our services are for the electoral areas, the rural areas. And as you can see from this, electoral area A has up to 68 services, area B 50. When it comes to Cumberland, you participate in only 19 of our services, and I've touched on some of those, the regional growth strategy and others. Some of them you have to participate in, such as administration and the regional growth strategies, but others have been decided at your or the previous council's choice. Next slide, please. This year was a unique year for all of us. And first and foremost, I want to thank you as part of the leadership of the Comox Valley for participating and helping guide the community through COVID. I also really want to acknowledge your staff. Your staff helped us through the Emergency Operations Center by participating in it. You helped us by collaborating with us to ensure that we were providing to each and every one of us. And I really appreciate your leadership as a council and the support that we received from your staff. One thing that was unique to the regional district was its Rethink Comox Valley initiative. All of our directors got together early in the pandemic and reflected on what they wanted to do and what they wanted to be, and they wanted to come through the COVID pandemic. Rethink is the result. The major focus of Rethink in every one of our services. Can we do it differently? Can we do it more effectively and efficiently? How must we manage these services through the pandemic and in the years beyond? It was very much a focus that our directors wanted to see us provide some level of tax relief to the citizens, but not one that was short term, not one that would result in a major kickback, but something that was legitimate and sustainable. So Rethink Comox Valley is the result. Kevin will outline some of the results of this as it comes into effect with respect to our financial plan and the savings we've seen. But most importantly, Rethink Comox Valley also saw us reallocate some of our staff resources. Unfortunately, we had to close the sports center and the aquatic center, but we did our most to ensure that those employees were kept good and continued to work for us. We've done phenomenal work in each facility. We are going to do more capital improvements to make sure they are in tip-top shape when it comes to the full-fledged opening that we anticipate next in the year. But also we reallocated many of our staff to support the community, to support the nonprofits that were providing good, solid services to the community during this. So that's it for me. I'll come back and highlight a few of the project's finances.
Great, thank you very much, Russell. So yes, I'm just going to speak briefly about our annual financial planning process and then jump straight into some highlights of the financial plan for the benefit of the Village of Cumberland. So as much as our annual financial planning process feels like almost a year-round exercise these days, especially with COVID, it formally kicks off internally within staff here in September and continues well into January of each year. That's in advance of the public presentations then are put forward over 7 weeks over the early part of the year. This year, we use the Rethink Comox Valley lens as well as our board strategic drivers, particularly to really kind of focus in on the core focus areas that helped us build our financial plans or our individual budgets this year. Of course, as the formal authority and approval for our service operational budgets and capital expenditures over the next 5 years, our annual financial planning bylaw represents the culmination of the presentation of, as Russell alluded to, 98 individual detailed service budgets. And that took place over 7 weeks between January and March of this year. That process incorporated all of the feedback and endorsements that we received from our regional district directors over that time. Also with COVID, we did put forward a comprehensive or opportunity for the public to also engage in this process through various online mechanisms, because we wanted to really make sure we provided that opportunity to the general public. At the end of the day, the bylaw was adopted by our regional district board back on March the 30th, just ahead of the legislated deadline of March 31st. So to give you a sense of some of the highlights from this year's 5-year financial plan, for 2021, the regional district consolidated budget totaled at $148.5 million. This is compared to $180.1 million in 2020. That reduction is largely driven by a number of very significant capital projects that Russell will be speaking to momentarily, but obviously our water treatment plant being a fairly significant one in that vein. Broken down between operating and capital, our 2021 operating budget is $76 million versus $79 last year. And 2021 capital budget of $72.5 million this year versus $100.9 million last year. So what does this mean for our overall requisitions year over year? What we've presented to our board is a year over year net decrease in the overall requisitions put forward of $226,708, or a 0.64% reduction in our total requisitions from 2020. That does include a $1 million reduction in the tax requisitions for the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service. And we are anticipating that that $1 million reduction will be in place at the very least through the next 5 years. What does this mean for the Village of Cumberland with respect to the year-over-year change in requisitions? Because again, as Russell alluded to, each of our service budgets do stand alone, and therefore the impact on an individual homeowner will really depend on where they live within the valley and the unique mix of services that they pay into. With respect to Cumberland ratepayers, there will be a modest increase of about $13,800 or 1.8%. However, if we take the emergency program service budget into account, which I'll be speaking to in a few slides, that actually drops further to about 1.67%. But of course, what we've also put forward and will be arriving to you shortly is a fairly significant reduction on the regional hospital district side, which of course is a standalone or separate entity from the regional district. This year, the board approved a tax requisition reduction of $4.4 million from 2020. So that went from 17 million in 2020 to 12.6 million this year. That will have a very sizable impact to the various ratepayers throughout the valley. And at this point, Russell's just going to quickly chime in on some of the key projects, and then I'll be providing some additional details on our requisition comparisons. Oh.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We're almost done, Mayor and Council. First and foremost, the regional growth strategy woke up last year. Under the leadership of our directors, there were a number of initiatives that enabled us to work with our partners, the municipalities, in cooperation. The housing needs assessment and the poverty assessment and reduction strategy, key elements of and key initiatives of the regional growth strategy that enabled us to work together in the Comox Valley on this. Again, another area that the collaboration of your staff to support this and work on a regional approach is much appreciated. And the result is information available to us all that's consistent for all the municipalities in the rural areas to act on. Another big thing for us, and I know you're not a participant in this, but you have had your own water treatment upgrades, is our own Comox Valley water treatment plant. I can't, the ones that are undertaking this project, our staff and consultants that are overseeing it. We are about 85% near completion. We are anticipating that it will be up and running this summer as is required in order for us to be on our own and off the penstock. It is a phenomenal project. We are so proud of it. We look forward to the opportunity of sharing it and showing it to you all. Please take advantage of our website that at the very least has some photos and videos of it. You do not participate in, but one that we've been working on, the conveyance issues. It is in everybody's interest in the Comox Valley that we resolve the Willamar Bluffs. We need to convey our sewer to the treatment plant, and we need to undertake that work. It has been an extensive public process. I'm very proud of that process. In fact, COVID has resulted in Zoom workshops and open houses that, in my opinion, have been more engaging and more involving of the public. Every single question that is asked by the public is seen by everybody. The answers are provided to everybody, and there's a record. I love open houses in person, but there's no question that the value of the Zoom meetings have been phenomenal. Our regional organics composting facility, something you'll very much want to know about, is proceeding and proceeding well. We are finalizing the design for that and we'll be going to tender soon. That involves the transfer station at the Comox Valley Waste Management Center, as well as the organics processing facility in Campbell River. Very proud that that project is continuing. We are in the midst of designing the new cell number 2. We're doing the design and engineering for that project that we will be commencing this year. And as a result of the closure at the Aquatic Center, the Regional District has committed approximately $800,000 in funding to maintenance and capital works. Let's take advantage of it being closed. Let's open it up as a better facility and undertake a new deck, roofing, or whatever we can do during this time that would otherwise slow down or diminish the access to that facility if we tried to do it when it was open. So those are just some of the summaries. We look forward to any of your questions. Kevin will just finalize with a few details specific to Cumberland.
Okay, thank you, Russell. So this slide just shows an overall consolidated requisition comparison year over year for all of the service areas. So as you can see, for the municipalities, for example, there's a modest increase that's been put forward, but of course that's taken outside of our sewer and solid waste management service. Obviously, you can see there with the $1 million reduction in the solid waste requisition, that's a pretty sizable percentage decrease in that particular tax requisition. Sewer, which obviously Cumberland doesn't pay into, that's for Courtney and Comox. There was a scheduled increase of 6% or 6.25% there year over year. And that's again, moving forward to the liquid waste management planning that Russell just spoke to. So you can see there that again, the overall reduction in our requisitions year over year of 0.64%. Of course, within regional districts, changes in the requisitions for each of our service areas can be impacted by a number of different factors. It can be firstly impacted by an increase or decreased requirement in revenue needed for the service. Russell did speak to some of the services where we have seen some increases this year because of the exponential growth of activity in those areas, such as homelessness supports, such as regional growth strategy, and also with respect to the rec complexes. As much as those facilities have been shuttered because of COVID, we are undertaking, taking advantage of the opportunity to do some significant projects. And also there hasn't been any sizable requisition increases in that service in a number of years. And we obviously want to make sure we're being able to continue to provide a well-rounded and sustainable service. To give you an example of across the 98 services, kind of where the impacts were, we actually had 11 regional district services with some, more significant increases. However, we did have 34 regional district services where the tax requisitions actually remained relatively flat, maybe small changes up or down accordingly. But we also had 14 regional district services with some fairly sizable decreases, obviously solid waste being part of that. Another thing that can impact requisitions, of course, is the addition or deletion, I suppose, in the case may be, of new services. Don't have any new services planned for 2021, but we do have a number of services being proposed in 2022 for our regional district areas. That can include things like community hall services, mosquito abatement for our Area C, as well as some proposed roadside collection services. Obviously, assessment changes, will obviously have an impact as well. Even in a service with, a zero increase in requisition, if the assessments do change substantially, you can see an increase or a decrease in the apportionment because of that assessment shift. And of course, it could be a combination of those various factors. There may also be, in certain circumstances, a loss of other forms of revenue, such as grant funding, surplus funds carry forward, depleted reserves, etc. Obviously, as Cumberland has experienced, we did certainly see some benefits and stability with respect to the BC Restart Funds. So those were certainly, welcomed to help offset some of the losses that we were predicting in a couple of our very key services. And then the last slide I'll be covering today, just to give you a sense of, what does this mean to the average ratepayer in Cumberland? What this slide says is if a home assessed at $500,000 last year were worth the same value this year, that ratepayer would see a modest reduction of about $12.90. Now, of course, a home assessed at $500,000 last year wouldn't be the same this year. Some properties have certainly gone up and others have certainly gone down. That is outside of the charge to Cumberland for the Comox Valley Emergency Program. That's a contracted service. And currently the budget for that, the fee for that for Cumberland is slated to be $13,441 this year versus $14,534 last year. Now, for those that may not be aware, the Comox Valley Emergency Program is a service of the CVRD that helps prepare, educate, coordinate, and support our region during emergencies. This past year, we have seen the importance of collaborating together in order to provide effective public communications and service deliveries in times of need to support overall health, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently, as I just mentioned, the service is offered to municipalities through a contractual arrangement, which actually expires in December of 2021 this year. Under these contracts, all participating municipalities receive emergency management support with strategic direction provided by the Administration Committee, which is a partnership of all the CAOs. The overall program budget and voting privileges, however, for these services continue to lie with the electoral areas because when they were originally established, they were established as electoral area services. It is for this reason that this year we are proposing to provide a revised service delivery structure to help deliver a truly regional program service delivery with all the local governments in equal partnership. All participating partners will have equal voting rights and opportunities, with the emergency program service remaining as an essential service delivery to our community. So there'll be much more being communicated on this over the coming year, hopefully in advance of looking at kind of a different structure for the service delivery here, similar to what was in place in 2011 or 2012. And with that, that concludes the end of our presentation. Russell and I will certainly be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
There, I had to unmute myself. Thank you very much. Members of council, Councillor Sullivan, you have questions?
No, just a comment. Really nice, great report. Thanks for that, gentleman. Just looking over this report, it's just reminded about how massive the undertaking that the CBRD actually is. Just going through it, just the little things like rural community halls with non-touch amenities for $25,000, and a new fire hall for Merville. Just the gamut is just run by the CBRD. So it's an impressive thing that you guys pulled together. So thanks for that report, guys.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks, Russell and Kevin. That's great. And I just want to say that you guys have both done amazing work over the last year. Rethink Comox Valley, I think, was quite successful, and we've just been challenged in so many ways, and you both have risen to that challenge. So thanks so much for your work.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I really thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciated the opportunity to look through this and see the board's priorities, social well-being and fiscal responsibility and climate crisis and environmental stewardship and protection and Indigenous, all playing out in the budget. You guys have done some pretty amazing work this year, so thank you for that. And especially I wanted to mention the partnerships with community groups and the support through COVID funds. That was really good to see and much appreciated. So thanks.
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, I share the same wonder at how this is all put together. All the many services. Some of them really tiny, some really huge, and yeah, I'm proud to be a member of the Comox Valley Regional District. They do good service for us where we do get service. So, thank you.
And I will also echo those thoughts with council that you provide a very valuable service to many citizens, and your report was amazing. Everybody loves to see a decrease, so thank you very much. Look forward to continue our relationship in the future. So thank you. There is no motion for this. It was just a report, and so thank you very much, gentlemen. Oh, you're back, Russell.
Yeah, I've been here the whole time, but just because of the connectivity, I thank you so much for all your comments. We'll be sure to pass those on to all of our directors that provide us with the leadership, as well as the staff that have assisted Kevin and I. So
it's been a very tough year with COVID, and we've all had challenges, and it's amazing what we can do when we have to. So thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Next, moving along, that council received the correspondence from the Comox Valley Youth Climate Council, CYCC, requesting support in the preservation of BC's old growth forest.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Carried. I'm sure you've all read the information provided, and we're open for discussion. And so we're going to go around the table, and we'll start with Councillor Kettler.
Thanks, Mayor Baird. Yeah, I think this is great. I'm glad to see that Comox Youth Council are bringing it forward. I just wanted to mention that Vice Chair Hamir has also put it on the agenda for the regional district for tomorrow night. As we've talked about it and discuss it here, I will also be making council's wishes known on the vote there tomorrow night as well. Yeah, it's obviously something that's really come up in the last little while. I think 2 years ago it was voted. The city of Victoria had a resolution at UBCM regarding old growth, and all of a sudden there was massive lineups at both the pro and con mics at the convention, and it resulted in the city of Victoria actually withdrawing their resolution at that time, because it is just so controversial and divisive for a lot of resource-based communities. But I don't think there's any denying that it's not sustainable. We're already down to just a fraction, as the resolution says, 2.7% old growth left, 1% total of BC forests. So it's really dire, I think, now, to make sure that no more old growth is removed from our province, and specifically from Vancouver Island. So yeah, I would support a resolution requesting that of the province.
Councillor Brown?
Yes, this is a really fantastic letter, and really demonstrates the capacity of the Comox Youth Council and their commitment to this. So I very much appreciate their work that went into this presentation. I've been thinking about this stuff for 20 years, since I was in university, and I have watched communities and the employment that forestry offered them be decimated by mechanization and consolidation in the industry. And I think forest companies have been allocated reign over a huge portion of this province, and they have completely failed to create a sustainable industry out of it, despite dire warnings for more than 20 years about whether it's beetles or monocrops or replanting or thinning or old growth or any of the myriad of things that have not gone well. And I really appreciated the strategic old growth report, and its note that had previous old growth forest strategies and recommendations been fully implemented, we would likely not be facing the challenges around old growth to the extent we are today, i.e. high risk to loss of biodiversity in many ecosystems, risk to potential economic benefits due to uncertainty and conflict, and widespread lack of confidence in the system of managing forests. That is not an understatement, and it led to what Councillor Kettler mentioned at UBCM or AVICC or whichever one was it. These communities that are still depending on these jobs, as they dwindle, are not getting any returns. We have a forest that surrounds us and very little employment that happens out of it, and yet we face the consequences of the decisions they make. So yeah, I'm definitely in support of this motion. Thanks.
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, it's too bad that people didn't think ahead. Well, in a way, there is a lot of language around how often you're supposed to cut a stand of trees, but the industry is cutting trees sooner than they get to be the right size. They're cutting them small, they're clear cutting whole areas. They used to leave areas for greening up, but now it's just everything has to go. So I really like the fact that this is, well, I'm sad that it takes the Comox Youth Climate Council to bring this forward. Where are the adult members? I mean, I do know that many of them are down on the line down at Ferry Lake, but we really have to think of the future, and that's what the group is doing. Is they're going to inherit this world, this environment. So it's all the more important for them that there's something left. I understand the problem is that there's people need jobs in logging, and we have less and less trees to log. So something's got to give. The government, I don't know if they can subsidize the logging industry. I really don't know what a good solution is.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I was there with Councillor Kettler, and I recall that situation, and it just blew my mind. I thought that was an absolute no-brainer, and it was the most contentious issue of the day. I agree with Councillor Brown. I think spotlight should be on this industry that is absolutely not taken care of themselves over the last 20 years, like she mentioned, in all those different ways. And anything we can do to support moving forward to save these trees, I would support.
Thank you very much, council members. I thought the youth did an amazing job of supplying the information that they provided council. I found the 185, the pictures were absolutely amazing. They're very hard to look at and see that lonely Doug tree standing there all by itself. I can't imagine what went through their mind when they left that standing there by themselves, and to create an atmosphere around it. And the picture of the bear going up the tree is absolutely amazing. And I don't see how anybody could actually feel right about logging those trees. It's certainly not worth the money that they get for it, that's for sure. There's more to it than money. I know I was on a conference the other day, last week, and the minister spoke, the new Minister of Forests, Anne Conroy, and she talked about how she did not want her great-grandchildren to read about the old growth forest. She wanted them to feel it and see it. And I thought, well, that was an amazing thing coming from her, and I hope she lives up to her statement that she supports this and keeps those trees safe from logging, because once they are gone, they will not be returning. So I certainly do support this. So would somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so I'd like to move the resolution, the call for immediate protection of all at-risk old growth forests in BC. Whereas ancient high productivity big tree old growth ecosystems are globally one of the most valuable climate mitigation and resiliency assets in terms of carbon storage, sequestration, protection against wildfire, storage of water, and bank of biodiversity. And whereas the 2.7% of the original high productivity big tree old growth forests, less than 1% of BC's total current forested land, only 75% are still slated to be eliminated through logging. Be it resolved that the Village of Cumberland call on the provincial government to immediately defer logging in all high productivity, rare, oldest, and most intact old growth forests as recommended by the Old Growth Strategic Review until all 14 of the panel's recommendations have been implemented, including deferrals in such at-risk old growth forest as the headwaters of Fairy Creek, the Upper Walbrand Valley, the Namit Valley, Eden Grove, Edinburgh Mountain, Upper sorry, Tatiscat Valley, East Creek, Claskish Valley, Nimkish Lake, and inland old growth temperate rainforest. And that the Village of Cumberland formally oppose the logging of at-risk old growth forests, and that the Village of Cumberland call on the government of British Columbia to allocate funding to enact deferrals in an economically just manner in the full spirit of reconciliation, and to support the economic transition of affected First Nations and non-First Nations communities from unsustainable old growth logging for the development of long-term sustainable local economies.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Well said. Next, that council received the correspondence from R. Dyson, Chief Administrative Officer, CBRD, regarding Regional Organics Composting Project, SWMP Targeted Amendment.
See.
Second. All in favor? Carried.
Make it.
Clayton, are you, I saw your light come on.
Yes, sorry, Your Worship. I just want to mention in relation to this one here, under 6.2 there, the actual resolution is on page 185 that they were seeking for this one. You'll see that one from the letter of the draft letter of support that they're seeking. So I just wanted to mention that that's actually the resolution that they're seeking. So
Thank you for that clarification. So would somebody like to, any discussion? Nope, then Councillor Sullivan, you want to read the?
Sure. I'll move that the Village of Cumberland endorses the Comox Strathcona Waste Management's targeted amendment of its 2012 Solid Waste Management Plan, and that a letter of support be provided to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Seconder? Councillor Spruill, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, point 3, that council received the correspondence from Chair Jesse Kettler, Chair of the CVRD Opioid Crisis.
Receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Now, Councillor Kettler, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, so we had originally received correspondence from Mom Stop the Harm. They're a network of Canadian families impacted by substance use related harms and deaths. And since then, there's been a number of municipalities putting forward a resolution regarding the toxic drug supply. I think Prince George started it, and most recently last week, Courtenay Council unanimously passed the same resolution. And it was supported by the Comox Valley Substance Use Strategy Committee, of which both Councillor Brown and I sit. So I did submit the resolution that came from Prince George, but there was some amendments to it at Courtenay Council. I think are good amendments. They spoke quite eloquently toward the issue, and one of the things was the use of the word overdose as opposed to toxic drug supply. And, so I do have an amendment that uses that in place of overdose, the wording of toxic drug supply, and I've shared that with council and with staff so that we could pass that today. Yeah, the word overdose, I think it's important to distinguish because it really is a mischaracterization of what's happening out there. And I just want to give the example of my own family. My stepbrother passed away 2 years ago because of toxic drug supply. There was just a couple of grains of carfentanil in the drug that he intended to use. No, he didn't intend to use any fentanyl. So implying that he overdosed just isn't correct. He was poisoned by toxic drug supply. And I think that, that's happening to so many people. All sorts of drugs are contaminated with fentanyl or fentanyl derivatives. And I think it kind of devalues the person when we just categorize it as an overdose. It's almost like you're saying, well, that person was in whatever state, you're making these assumptions about them, and it was probably inevitable or something like that. And it's just not true. These deaths are totally avoidable. Thousands and thousands of unnecessary deaths happening. So I just wanted to make that distinction and share that with council. Yeah, and hopefully we can move this resolution today. Thanks.
Okay. We'll get comments from everybody. Councillor Brown?
Yes, thanks so much, Councillor Kettler, for bringing this forward. Decriminalization has obviously come up many times in the the substance use strategy committee conversations. And it is the first step to changing our approach to substance use and using those, diverting the resources from criminalizing drug use to be better placed with responses that promote education and harm reduction and actual assessment and treatment services. And I appreciated the rewording of the toxic drug supply as well. It's generally not overdoses, it's bad drugs, and that's easily fixed. So happy to support the motion.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience, Councillor Kettler. I definitely support this resolution and the changing of the term. And maybe we might be looking with those lenses at some of these problem houses that we have instead of criminal charges, trying to work with people more better with that kind of angle to it. Yeah.
Councillor Sproul?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yes, good. Yeah, it's such a complicated thing. I mean, yes, you could maybe find the person who's providing it in the community, but the thing is, it's just really hard because a lot of the people who are getting toxic drugs are in their own homes, often on their own, more than you think, just ordinary people, and it's really hard to know how you could save them if there's nobody around. But I know, I think really I support the motion. I do think a lot of things could happen if the illegality, the criminal charges taken away. Portugal, a small country in Europe, has managed to use the decriminalization of serious opioids and has been successful. So it's clearly that it doesn't take a lot of money to throw at it. It's coming up with a strategy. And I think the public shame attached to all these things has to go. And if it was decriminalized, it would be. I think improvements could be made.
I'm certainly supporting the resolution. I find it really unfortunate that it's taking us so long as a country to accept this and to actually do something about it, and having all these deaths. It's just uncalled for. There's no reason for it. And the government needs to step up to the plate, especially when you have the RCMP supporting what they want to do. And it makes sense. The crime rate, it would affect everything, healthcare, all that. And it would, they also need help and mental health services and all the other services that come with it. But to get a safe drug, that's the highest priority. So who would like to make the motion?
I have it handy if you want me to read it.
Sure, go for it.
Whereas the toxic drug supply crisis is one of the largest public health emergencies of our lifetime, with a death about every 2 hours on average and a death toll over 16,360 since 2016, January 2016 to March 2020. And whereas other countries have significantly reduced drug-related fatalities with reforms such as legal regulation of illicit drugs to ensure safe supply and decriminalization for personal use. And whereas the federal government has indicated it is premature to discuss these measures until there is comprehensive supports for people to get well. And whereas supports are needed, but measures that save lives are essential if people are to survive and access supports. And whereas the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police have stated that they agree the evidence suggests decriminalization for simple possession as an effective way to reduce the public health and public safety harms associated with substance use. And whereas the toxic drug supply crisis rages, showing few signs of abating, therefore be it resolved that Council requests the Government of Canada to A, declare the toxic drug supply crisis a national public health emergency, and immediately seek input from people most affected by this crisis and meet with provinces and territories to develop a comprehensive pan-Canadian overdose action plan, which includes comprehensive supports and full consideration of legal reforms that other countries have implemented to significantly reduce drug-related fatalities and stigma, such as legal regulation of illicit drugs to ensure safe supply of pharmaceutical alternatives to toxic street drugs, and decriminalization for public personal use.
Councillor Kettler, did you want to comment further? You're seconding it?
Yes, exactly. Thank
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Get all in favor? Carried. Next, recommend that council receive development variance permit 2749 Derwent Avenue.
Move receipt.
Seconder? All in favor? Councillor Sproul? Hello.
Hi, sorry. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this one may look familiar because you have seen it already. The original report that I brought to Council, I had recommended that it went to the APC, but it was actually approved that evening instead, so I hadn't had a chance to send out the notification. So we're asking that you rescind the previous approval now that we've done the required mailings and approve it again this evening. So that was for the Derwent height variance.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, there's two motions there. If somebody would like to make them.
Sure, I'll move that council rescind resolution 2069, that council approve the development variance permit 2021-01 DV, variance of 8 inches in height for the property legally described as Lot 9, Block 12, DL 21, Plan VIP 522A, 2749 Derwent Avenue. And that council approved the development variance permit 2021-01 DV, variance of 8 inches in height for the property legally described as Lot 9, Block 12, DL 21, Plan VIP 522A, 2749 Derwent Avenue, having completed the neighborhood notification.
Seconder? Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Next, that council received development permit 2522 Dunsmir Avenue report.
Lovely.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Need a motion to receive?
Move receipt.
Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Now you can begin.
I get so excited every time. All right. So this is coming back to you from the Advisory Planning Commission, who had a look at it at their previous meeting. So this is for the proposed accessory dwelling unit at 2522 Dunsmir Road. So it did go to APC and they recommended approval of the development permit, substantially in compliance with the draft DP attached to the report. And their comments essentially were just ensuring that there was parking on site, which there was, and that they inquired about a geotech requirement. Oh, perfect. A geotech requirement for building on a slope, and that happens at building permit. So that was the feedback from APC. And I actually am just introducing this report, and Courtney, our Manager of Development Services, is going to take over with a little presentation right now.
Hey, thank you very much, and good evening, Mayor and Council. So this slide just shows the location, subject property at 2522 Dunsmir Camp Road. And let's see, advance my slide here. There it is. Okay. So typically, development permit applications for ADUs receive few, if any, public submissions. But in consideration of the volume of public input for this application and the comments received, we prepared a more detailed presentation for tonight. The staff recommendation is the permit is issued because the DP guidelines have been complied with, and I'll go into a further explanation of that analysis. There's an additional item, and that is that council may require the applicant to hold a second neighborhood public meeting because the mailed ad for the meeting that was held on February 17th was not sent. Council can require that the applicant hold a neighborhood public meeting at their option, and did require that in this case, but due to clerical, that particular notification was not sent. However, there might not be any new input that has not already been heard if a second meeting were to be held. All 16 properties that are within the notification area did receive a first mail notice that is sent for every development permit application that advises them of the application. And the neighborhood public meeting was advertised in the newspaper, and several neighbors did attend the meeting on February 17th, and a number of written submissions have also been received covering several topics. And this notification for the public meeting is not required in the Local Government Act. So with all this information, that's the reason why staff is not recommending that neighborhood public meeting be held again, but it's certainly the option of council to require that. So now I'll go through the issues raised in the public submissions. The first one is parking, and you can see in this, I've marked up this site plan here, and there were overall concerns about parking on Camp Road. But for this particular ADU application, it does comply with the requirements for on-site parking, and that is 1 spot for the ADU and 2 spots for the main dwelling. And those are noted here, and they're within the property line of this property. Those spots, that the 2 existing spots on the right exist, and then that parking spot for the ADU would be created on what's sort of the front lawn area right now. And I want to show you this picture to help sort of understand the area a little bit. This is related to parking, but also related to understanding where the ADU is located. So there right now is much of this fence is actually encroaching on the 6-meter right-of-way that is to the west or to the left of the property. So at about the right side of that gate is where the property line is. So this will all be removed, and the encroachment would be resolved. You know, if the during construction of the ADU, and the pathway that leads to the ADU would be located on the subject property and just a bit to the right of that gate. Where this green tarp is, this is the 6-meter right-of-way, and the parking spot for the ADU is to the right, sort of off of this picture, as to the right of it and within the property. And this is a picture of the same area, but from the other direction. So it's on the property looking towards Camp Road. And you can see I've made a little red line there to show approximately where the property line is. The fencing and the personal items in the right-of-way would be removed. And the walkway to the ADU is on the property. It's sort of between the property line and where that existing patio is. So this is the view of the proposed ADU as would be seen from Camp Road, but it would be behind the principal dwelling. Because of the slope of the property, much of the ADU would be visible from the road, covered, the perspective would be covered by the roof of the main dwelling, but some of it will be visible above and behind it. But screened partially from the road by two existing coniferous trees. And this is a view from the west or the left side of the dwelling. And the public right-of-way is directly adjacent to this side of the ADU. And this is the view from the east. There's another residential property to the east. And so back to this one here, a little bit more on this. So public submissions have covered topics of privacy and screening and form and character. So the purpose of the development permit area, as written in the official community plan, is to mitigate impacts on privacy and the established character of neighborhoods. The official community plan acknowledges that by allowing ADUs in some part of Cumberland, in the parts of Cumberland where they are allowed, that privacy and character of those areas may be impacted. And the purpose of requiring a development permit is to minimize these impacts, but not necessarily to eliminate them. So the issue of privacy, it's addressed through several of the guidelines in the development permit area, and we've listed the relevant ones in the staff report. So on this side of the house that's shown on the screen, there are windows. So there's a guideline that says that large windows looking onto neighboring properties should be avoided. And lights should not shine directly onto properties. So their large windows have been avoided here, and the lighting will shine directly down and will not shine out onto the right-of-way or the property next to it. And the same is true for lighting on the other side of the ADU. And there are existing trees in the right-of-way that will provide some screening to the property to the west. So we did a site visit to get a better understanding of these privacy considerations. So this photo is taken from the walkway going up towards the entrance of the ADU, looking west to the right of way and the residential property on the other side. Now these are deciduous trees, so they haven't leafed out yet. And in the summertime, they'll provide some more screening than they do right now. And this is a similar picture, but this is just a little bit further down the slope. And this picture is taken from approximately where the deck of the ADU would be, keeping in mind that it's at ground level. I'm just standing on the ground. I haven't climbed up a ladder because the deck will be at a higher elevation than ground level. But this shows and it does look a little bit to the right of where this photo is as well, so looking to the side of the house towards Camp Road, to the woodshed on the neighboring property. So the DPA guidelines require that privacy is considered and mitigated. So in this case, the ADU is designed for the sun deck to have a solid guardrail, 1.6 meters in height. That's 3.5 feet, 3.5 feet. And the existing vegetation in the right-of-way does offer some screening as well. So when it comes to form and character, the DPA guidelines say that design and siting should be sensitive to scale, mass, and form of adjacent buildings, and that buildings should not overlook or shadow adjacent properties. So the ADU will not cast shadow most of the year as it's on the north side of the property. The massing is mitigated through the sloped shed roof that parallels the slope, so it gives the ADU a more minimal appearance than a different roof line would. The ADU does to some extent overlook the area around it because of the higher elevation, but through the design of the roof, location of windows, and the existing screening, it's considered that unavoidable overlooking has been mitigated to some extent through this application. One of the guidelines in the DPA says that materials should reflect the character of the main dwelling. And in this case, the main dwelling uses vinyl siding, which is actually prohibited in another guideline. So instead, the proposed materials do comply with another guideline that actually lists different building materials that are encouraged. And so that's a good example of how determining compliance with development permit area guidelines is a balancing of objectives. It's not a prescriptive list. Although one guideline might say that it has to, match the main dwelling. Well, if that's vinyl siding on the main dwelling, that isn't what's done. This is the final slide. One guideline states the design should be sensitive to the form of adjacent buildings. So, and this is the balancing of objectives here. So there's a diversity of styles adjacent to this ADU. This is why I'm showing this picture. This is an old one. This is from Google Street View. I didn't take a picture like this when I was there. So this is an old one, but the houses, these two homes look about the same from the outside. So the principal dwelling is a simple rectangular home, vinyl siding and a pitched roof. The dwelling to the west is more of a craftsman style. To the east, the home is 2 stories. With shingled siding. And the shed roof style is similar to the roof style of the main dwelling, which is it'll look similar from the road. The materials chosen for the roof shingles, will be similar to the main dwelling and the dwelling you see here to the left. And the shed roof style is noted in the Camp Road Statement of Significance as being a defining character element of the area. So that's the thought process in determining that compliance with that guideline about being sensitive to the form of adjacent buildings. So to conclude this overview of privacy informing character, when balancing these objectives that are in the development permit area, it is staff's recommendation that the guidelines are complied with and that the permit should be issued. Now, as this isn't a prescriptive list of, the way something like a fence height is prescribed in the zoning bylaw, there could be additional options to address the privacy concerns. So for example, there could be a requirement for some fencing along the west side of the property. That isn't something, our determination so far is that the existing screening by the vegetation in the right-of-way adequately addressed the privacy that could be achieved by a fence on that side, either just in front of the entrance or part way along the property line. A fence really could be an option for some additional screening. So with that, or there may be other things that council may like to see adjusted in the design of the ADU that could further mitigate any of the concerns or better address the development permit area guidelines. You may have different thoughts and perspectives than have been determined by staff so far. So with this application in front of you, you may request further information. You may require a second public meeting, as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. You can approve the permit subject to additional requirements, or you can deny the permit. If you do deny the permit, it must be with enough information for the applicant to understand how they can revise their proposal and come back in a different way and comply with the DPA guidelines and receive the permit for an ADU. And just one very last thing. There has been some public input suggesting that ADUs should not be permitted on Camp Road at all. And council may direct staff to come back with a report on options to no longer allow ADUs on Camp Road, either temporarily or permanently. And that's something that we can provide information back to you separately from this application. Thank you.
I have to remember to take myself off, excuse me, off mute. Okay, so who would like to go first? Councillor Spruill.
So much to say. Really, I've been up there every day. I've read this stuff over and over again, all the letters coming in, and I'm not thrilled at this. What I don't get is the Heritage Committee has been working on the SOS for this place. We put hours and hours and why is it not being referred to the Heritage Committee? I don't understand that. The house as presented has nothing to do with heritage. If we pass this and everybody on Camp Road puts in something like that, where's the heritage? Anyway, that's just one of the 100 points I have. I'm not supportive of that. And also the privacy issues are just so numerous. I'll let other people have to say because I have pages.
Okay, who would like to go next? Councillor Sullivan?
Sure. Thank you for that report, Courtney. Yeah, I personally don't see anything wrong with this ADU, especially after this presentation for the privacy and the form and character. From my perspective, when I look front on at the house, as I would be looking from the street, half of it will be covered by the existing house, and the other half looks almost identical to a lot of other just small houses around Cumberland. So I don't see any big difference other than maybe the side view, which most people won't see because it's in the back of the lot. I think the proponents have done an exceptional job of trying to mitigate all of these issues. I think it's unfortunate that everybody on Camp Road seems to be really negatively impacted by this. Although I did take a walk with Councillor Brown, and half of Camp Road already has other ADUs or other residences, double residences, and lots of residences have multiple vehicles. So I don't really see any issue with this. So thanks.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I also support the application. Again, that was a really good presentation of the facts, and maybe you should go to the next.
Councillor Brown?
Thanks, dogs. Yeah, so this has been a really challenging application. Obviously, you've all seen the letters, and I've received phone calls and all kinds of things. I think when staff is looking at whether or not it fills the requirements of the DP, it's that opinion is very much based on the existing siting of the building. So since the building is sited on a slope, they've mitigated as much as they can the impacts of massing and forming character on the ADU. But if we step back and ask ourselves, should we allow the building at all, then we look at it from the true scale of it. And if you look at the drawing on page 214 or 23 of 32, you can see how the building will tower above the existing building on the site, and look down on the rest of the neighborhood. And while there are very many small outbuildings on Camp Road, very few of them are sitting at the top of a hill looking over the neighbors and the existing property. And I noticed that so our bylaw, I guess, refers to neighboring properties, but what about the building that's already on the property?
Mm-hmm.
It is going to completely overshadow and look down on this building and make it make their space completely unlivable back there. So they've lost that privacy. I also have concerns about where their amenity area is. Is it also on the slope, and aren't they not required to have some sort of flat area for the residents of this building to enjoy? I think the 3 windows on the west side, plus the glass door, it looks like do amount to large windows, given the size of the building relative to the size of the windows. And they do look down onto the neighbor's building, and hopefully they can preserve those trees on the side, but that's not guaranteed. I believe they're alders or something. So just the position of where the building is on the property, and the fact of the slope of the property makes this design untenable to me. The massing, I think, is going to be out of character for the neighborhood. And I understand that the proponent has a plan developed as well that could be put in place for the main building as an option, so that we are not restricting generating more revenue from the property in a different way that's more suitable to the rest of Camp Road and in line with the statement of significance. I'll stop there for now.
Councillor Kettler.
Thanks. Yeah, I've walked the street, did the tour with Councillor Brown, thank you, and looked at the property. I think any building, any accessory dwelling unit built in the R1A zone has that issue of it looks down into other people's property. I think this particular development kind of got caught in the crosshairs of the statement of significance, which we haven't implemented in any way as far as bylaw heritage protection. So that's a difficult place for the applicant. I think that it kind of made it a little bit of a battleground for that, when that's not really what it should be. We need to apply the current zoning and the current bylaws that we have on that property, and not try and place future expectations of what should be happening there now. I'm not saying that in the future we shouldn't consider changing zoning there, possibly creating a special development area for Camp Road. That should be a consideration, but currently they're meeting all of the requirements. With the slope, from my dining room table here can look down into the living rooms of 2 people on Kendall from Rydell, and certainly see their backyards fully, their decks fully. That's normal densification, I think, here. And I know that we don't want that same level of densification necessarily for all areas of Cumberland, but we purposefully are trying to infill. That is a strategy for us to densify where we already have infrastructure, where we already have water and sewer. That's a strategy that is encouraged by best practices from all municipalities. And so I still think that we need to weigh the values here of having additional housing in heritage, and there's still work to be done on the heritage aspect of it. But I certainly don't think that this application should be denied. The infill that we've been doing over the past few years has played a very important role in providing housing to our community. You know, almost 7 years on the Affordable Housing Committee. And we've only just got our first affordable housing project this year. It's not built yet, but it's on the books now. So all that infill that we've done with, you know, secondary suites and with coach houses has been really important to keep up any semblance of housing, rental housing for people. I wouldn't want to see that taken away. I think every time this happens, you know, the neighbors have issues with privacy, and they're valid issues. But that is part of densification, and that's actually part of best practices, part of what we're supposed to be doing here. So yeah, I support this application, and I think they've done everything they can to meet the standards that we've set for them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Kreppner. Well, my opinion is I think it's a beautiful little place. It is, they've done a nice job in that, but I do not support where it's going. I think it's doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. I think that we need to remember the heritage of the Camp Road and the purpose of the Camp Road. And we've lost so much heritage in this community over the years. And yes, I support an ADU on that property, absolutely, but not in this style. And I think Councillor Brown, you said they had another plan that could possibly work. I would like to see that other plan. And I think that needs to be something that's more in keeping with the rest of the area down there. We've been very fortunate in Cumberland, in the old section of Cumberland, where houses have been remodeled and redone, and they've done it on the inside of the homes, but they kept the outside to what it looked like before, just did upgrades. And so we retain that heritage that's so important in the community. And many of those people bought there knowing what they were buying into and loved that part of the community and that heritage component. And that street is unique to Canada. And I want to see that maintained and preserved. And I don't think a house like this fits into that design. And so I'm open to seeing their other, if they have something else to offer, absolutely. Councillor Spruill?
The issue, I think, is the sloping terrain. If this had all been on one level and that building had been behind, it wouldn't cause such privacy issues. And I don't know of many of the ADU sites in Cumberland that have a hill behind them. This is an unusual situation. And I think if we're going to re-look at ADUs, we would put some kind of language to say that if it's going to be on a steep slope, because it is a steepish slope, it's not really steep, but steep enough. And I remember when the neighbor to the west built her house, 15 years ago, she sited it right at, she found the only flat place and put it there. She didn't go up the hillside. And she worked really hard. She really values her privacy, as does everybody, I would think. But she now will have her patio will be right underneath. The windows will look out onto her 2 patios in our house. I haven't been into the property, but I can see how private it is. But the thing is, where's the heritage? I don't understand. Is it not part of the ADU is looking at heritage and how it fits in? I'm still not clear why it wasn't run through the Heritage Committee. And maybe our planner would know.
Yes, Courtney.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so this is in a development permit area for infill residential. And because it's not in a heritage conservation area, it wasn't referred to the Heritage Committee. So the development permit area guidelines don't specifically speak to heritage. Probably the closest is that buildings should be sensitive to the scale, mass, and form of adjacent buildings.
So any further discussion, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the, I agree that our accessory dwelling units and the hundreds of them that we've approved have provided super valuable rental stock in this community. And I think that they are an important tool for us in densifying Cumberland, as Councillor Cutler mentioned. But I will say that Camp Road has significantly densified over the past, I don't know how many years, 20 years, that the vast majority of the properties on the street do have a secondary street at minimum, if not more than one. And that is partly what's creating some of the parking, puzzling parking problems on the street. Yeah, and I just I understand at the public neighborhood meeting that the proponent mentioned that they had planned to do well, I don't know whether it's a new building or moving the existing building forward and putting a secondary suite that was a design that would fit better, that was more character like the character on Camp Road, and that it wasn't financially feasible when they looked at it. But having experienced the latest 2 sales on Camp Road, I suspect that it is now quite feasible financially to do that work. We had a house sell for 3 times its assessed value down the road, and one sold for double its value closer to me. So yeah, I would like to ask for a different design on this property if they're looking to densify.
So would you like to make the motion, please?
That council denied the development permit 2021-01 DP for an accessory dwelling unit on property described as lot 6 DL 24 plan VIP 13640 2522 Dunsmir Avenue.
Councillor Sullivan? Okay, now Councillor Sullivan.
Curious, like, are we going to talk about the fact that the APC recommended this, and that we've never gone against any APC recommendation?
We have. Yeah.
I believe we haven't actually. Yeah, this just feels to me like NIMBYism, and frankly, I think the house is half hid behind the first house. So I just agree with this.
Okay, Clayton, you wanted to say something?
Your worship, just maybe I'll hand it over to the manager of development services just in regards to some clarity on this one, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask that any direction to deny include information so that the applicant understands how they can revise their ADU plan, so that an ADU on that lot can receive a development permit. So I've heard mention of privacy and of the character. So those need to be linked directly. The privacy is linked directly to guidelines. I don't know if that's the feedback you want to give. And if it's related to character, sort of need some information about what you are looking for so that in your view it would meet the development permit area guidelines.
I can add to the motion if you like. So that the proponents are asked to look at a design that would be more sensitive to the scale, mass, and form of the adjacent buildings. So either on a lower piece of the property, if that's possible, or even the front yard, if possible. And yeah, and with siding that is more in line with the like most of the houses on this street have wood siding or wood looking siding or cedar or shingles. Is that what they're called? Shake shingles.
Okay, Councillor Brule, are you in favor of that? You seconded the motion.
Yes, I just wanted to add one more thing. I'd like to refer it to the Heritage Committee. I really have concerns if every house on Camp Road puts something in of that style. It's going that particular ADU is going to dwarf the houses around, and if everybody has it, then what's left of the heritage? What is there in this system of development permits? What is in place that makes sure that we don't lose all the heritage value on Camp Road? I understand the current applicants are working from what they're allowed to do. They've looked it all up. But if we are considering reviewing DPs and heritage, then we really have to think of the heritage value of that street, as it is not just one house starting an absolute landslide of building non-heritage. I'm absolutely, anyway, I can't say any more on it, but I really don't, something else has to be found to make this work. Privacy is definitely a problem, and losing our heritage is a serious, potentially losing our heritage.
Councillor Kettler and then Councillor Sullivan.
Like I said earlier, I'm really concerned that that we're sort of mixing up future heritage preservation with the development permit that we're looking at right now. It's not in a heritage conservation area, which is why it wasn't referred to the Heritage Committee, as was said by our planner. Yes, there likely needs to be heritage protection for this area and zoning changes, but currently there is not. And currently they are allowed to have an ADU. And as the planner said, unless it's screening or, form and character changes, we cannot deny them because of heritage issues that we have not yet addressed. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm really shocked that this is what's happening. The price of the houses that have sold around it are not a valid reason for saying that we're going to deny this because they can now afford to build their more expensive option. These are just imaginary reasons to say no to this. Yeah, I'm really disappointed. From the pictures that staff just showed us, it seemed very private to me, actually. And the fact that we're just going to burden our staff with more, like, how much capacity do they need for Camp Road? We should just get a new staff member for Camp Road so they can just permanently deal with that.
Councillor Brown, you had your hand up. One more comment and then we're going to take the vote. Your mic's off. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. The denial is not NIMBY and not about heritage. It's about the ADU fitting into the context of this neighborhood. And I think that's an important consideration for any ADU. And that's why we have these things come for our approval or denial, because we can deny things based on form and character. And that is the problem with this application. It is a beautiful design for any other neighborhood. But it does not fit into this neighborhood. And that's why I've made that motion. The APC also was not privy to the letters that were submitted to council. They didn't have all the information that we have. And I did attend that meeting, so I know what the discussion looked like.
Okay. could I ask Rachel, could you read the motion, please?
Yes, Mayor Baird. The motion was and seconded that council deny the development permit 2021-01 DP for an accessory dwelling unit on property described as Lot 6, District Lot 24, Plan VIP 13640 at 2522 Dunsmir Avenue, and that the proponents are asked to provide a design that is more sensitive to the scale, mass, and form of the adjacent buildings on a lower piece of the property if possible, or even front yard if possible, with siding more in line with, I believe, adjacent with the neighborhood, such as wood siding, wood looking siding, or shingles.
Okay. Yes, Courtney?
Thank you very much. I just want to point out two things. EDU is not permitted in the front yard. So I just want to make that, remind you of that. And the other one is there is a guideline in the development permit area 4C that says the use of smooth surfaced wood, concrete board, acrylic stucco, brick, baked enamel, finished metal siding, or metal panels are encouraged.
Okay. So we need to remove those two items from the motion?
It sounds to me, I'm not clear on those two items in the motion and how they might be consistent with the development permit area and the zoning bylaw.
Right. So even though we have provided variances for front yard ADUs in the past, but we don't want to set up that process, I guess, in the motion.
That's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think about that for a minute.
I will just say, I don't believe there'd be room for an ADU in the front yard on that site, just from the site plan.
So what is your pleasure? What would you like to do with that? You already know that we can't ask for it. So we need to take it out of the motion.
Yeah, we can take out the reference to the front yard and to the siding and just stick with the mass and form and character.
Councillor Sproul, you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, does everybody, yes, Councillor Kettler?
But staff have asked for specifics because the proponent will obviously ask for specifics on how they can change to meet our request. And that is not given because we've just taken those specifics out because they are meeting the guidelines that are currently set out for them.
And staff, can't we not say no to this? I'm unclear why they've met the guidelines. Just because some councillors and the mayor don't feel that they like it, like they like this development, they've still met the guidelines. Are legally we allowed to say no?
Well, may I?
Yes.
Thank you. I think if there was something a bit more specific that we could provide to the applicant, then they would have a clear idea of how they could come back. So for example, the type of roof being used, if that was something that could be changed, or if there was a particular architectural element that you think would, that you feel would make the building more sensitive to the neighboring properties, then that would be important information to share. Because right now, our assessment is that the roof shape is consistent with the neighboring properties. So it would be very helpful to have something more specific, and that would put you in a stronger position and not being at legal risk. If you could be very clear so the applicant knows how to go back to the drafting table and change it, that's what's needed at this point to deny the permit.
So maybe Rachel could read the motion again with the two things removed.
Mayor Baird?
Yes, please.
The council deny the development permit 2021-01 DP for an accessory dwelling unit on property described as Lot 6, District Lot 24, Plan VIP 13640 at 2522 Dunsmir Avenue, and that the proponents are asked to provide a design that is more sensitive to the scale, mass, and form of the adjacent buildings.
Councillor Sproul.
Yeah, well, I can go with that, but if we need more reasons that we or reasons why what we would like to see change, it's really a lot of this is about privacy. And even though there are 2 mature trees along the fence line, they don't provide privacy because the tops of them is way up. The tangle of bushes to the side are all weed cherry trees. And I mean, I could see it if a big fence could be built or some way of screening the neighbors, and the people on the other side of the street too. If there was some kind of screening that could be brought into it. Other than that, I don't know whether, or different sighting of the deck, so the deck isn't looking out over, if it could face the other way. It's all about the privacy, and that's a big part of this guidelines of the DP. And I haven't seen that. I just don't think it provides any privacy for the rest of the street.
Okay, Councillor Brown, then Councillor Sutherland, and then we'll take the vote.
We could also ask that they relocate the balconies or minimize the impact of the balcony. Right now it's facing the front. Maybe it goes on the east side, or maybe it goes on the west side and provides more screening from that on that side, because it's a opaque railing on the balcony.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
Well, just to respond to the privacy fact, every ADU in this entire community breaches someone's privacy. And in fact, the pictures that Courtney showed us are more private than maybe 90% of the ADUs, it seems to me. So that just seems kind of strange. And just for people, this is the front of the house. That looks just about any house in Cumberland that's a single story. So for form and function, I just disagree. So yeah, I find it strange that the reason the council is not providing good enough reasons, actual reasons to deny this, in my opinion.
That's your opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Sproul. That is my opinion.
Okay, that will be enough. Okay, so we're going to take the vote. So all in favor of the motion? Opposed?
Opposed.
Record that, Rachel, please. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Kettler opposed. The motion is carried. Next, we have the council received the COVID-19 Restart Fund report.
Can I ask about an additional item that was suggested by planning staff before we leave this topic?
Okay, yes.
Sorry. Courtney suggested that that we could, I can't even remember now, put a temporary halt on development permits on Camp Road until we sort out what Camp Road, what sort of treatment or bylaw Camp Road needs. I feel I agree that these developers are caught in a bit of a mix right now, and I think we need to both council and the Heritage Committee have asked to consult with Camp Road residents. We've referred the setback conversation to the Heritage Committee, and they've asked for consultation, and we've referred it to affordable housing and the APC as well. And all that is going to take some time to sort out until we can get some feedback from those committees. And I think we need to have a fulsome conversation about what these neighborhoods, not just Camp Road, but other neighborhoods that Heritage Committee is looking at putting statements of significance on, what those bylaws might look like for those neighborhoods so that we don't run into these concerns again.
Courtney, how long of a time frame do you think that would be?
We can return with a report with options without too much time. I do see that Clayton's popped on. You might want to say something about timeline and what priority this would be.
He was my next person to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's really tough for us to, I mean, obviously there's a lot of other projects that are underway right now. Certainly we'll be in our next, at the Committee of the Whole coming up next meeting the end of April there, we'll be providing an update on all of our major projects. So if there is new initiatives like this, certainly we would have to look at how those impact other projects. And so we could have that discussion on the 26th if council wishes during that the strategic priority updates.
Yes, I think that would be more fitting to do it then than to do it tonight. Okay. Fine.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on. That council received the COVID-19 Restart Fund Program report.
We'll receive.
Seconded. Oh, sorry, Rachel.
I just point out that item 7.3 is an application regarding 2782 Alberston Avenue.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I moved on to the next page. Thank you very much for pointing that out. That council received the port applications for an OCP amendment and rezoning of 2782 Alberston Avenue.
We'll receive.
Seconder. Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I was starting to feel left out.
We got you.
Yes. So I have a couple of reports for you this evening. So both are referrals. So there's no decision required at this point, but I wanted to just provide a brief overview. So the first one is an application for an OCP amendment and a rezoning at 2782 Alberston Avenue. We received this application by new owners who recently purchased the property and wish to bring the property into compliance with our zoning bylaw. You might be familiar with it. There's a little mini storage building on the property, and then there is a fourplex. So the fourplex, the mini storage is legally non-conforming, which means at a certain point in time, the zoning bylaw did permit that use on the property, and then the zoning bylaw changed. The other building, a fourplex, is not permitted in that zone. It's zoned R1A residential infill, which permits a single family dwelling, a secondary suite, and an ADU. So fourplex doesn't fit in that zone. So the owners are seeking to rezone to permit that use of that building on the property. So as I said, it's the land use designation of the property is also residential infill. So both the OCP and the zoning bylaw have to be amended to permit what we are proposing with this property. So residential infill would have to be the land use designation would have to be changed to multifamily, and the zoning bylaw would have to be changed also to multifamily. The property owners wish to keep the legally non-conforming mini storage building for the time being. So there's no immediate plans to redevelop the property. They do wish to renovate and update the residential fourplex and to be able to apply for a building permit, they need to have the proper zoning in place. So they wish to legalize the units, get it up to code, and meet all of our requirements. which is great. That's really what you want. You want people to get with their properties, get into compliance. So the longer term goal is to potentially redevelop that property. There's no timelines in the, right now, which would involve to potentially remove the mini storage building and provide the owners with the possibility to add another fourplex, or redevelop the entire property with an apartment building of 8 units. So this meets, they're also interested in keeping the current rental situation. So it's a rental apartment. The fourplex is a rental. So they're interested in keeping it rental, which we have discussed a rental zone with them. And that's what the proposed zone would be for this new zone would be for the property. So in addition to that, staff feels that site could accommodate a little bit more density in the future, potentially, when it does get redeveloped. As I said, there's currently no plans to do that, so it could be down the road. But we're proposing in the proposed new zone that there would be density bonus, so they could have up to an additional, for each additional 3 units, one of those 3 units would be below market rent. And that's just below the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation determined average rent for the valley, for the region, 10% less than that. So it's a somewhat more affordable rent. So if they added up, they could add with the density bonus potentially in the future up to 6 units, and then 2 of those would have to be at a somewhat lower rent. Yes, they're meeting all the parking requirements. They have started doing some work on landscaping that will be part of the multifamily DP that would also be applied to the property as part of the OCP updates. In terms of meeting community amenity contributions, which we look at time of rezoning and OCP amendments, is that overall they do meet some of the desired community benefits, namely they are interested in keeping it as a rental. And the zone would be a rental zone for the property. So yes, and we recently presented, well, recently, time goes fast. It was 2020, actually, the housing needs assessment came to you that identified the really, really low vacancy rate we have in the region. So rental only would help it at least, contribute a little bit to that as well, to address that issue. So staff felt in terms of other amenity contributions, we didn't feel like that was sufficient in our opinion, and didn't identify anything additional, and then have the density bonus. So yeah, at this point, there's a referral to the Advisory Plan Commission for comment and further discussion, and then together with the comments of the Advisory Plan Commission, we would come back and present a draft zoning bylaw amendment and OCP amendment.
Councillor Kettler, questions?
Yeah, so just to confirm that the fourplex was built without a permit?
Yes, so that's correct. So the fourplex, there was an application to expand or extend the mini storage building. Yes, and that was made, I think I don't know if I put the date in here, around 1996, I believe. Yes. And that was never followed up on. So there was an application made, but then a permit, they did not actually submit a final plan, and it didn't progress. So we assumed that instead of that, the extension to the mini storage, they ended up building a fourplex. And it might not even have been initially fourplex. Maybe initially was just two units, and then divided further into 4. We don't know that for sure.
Yeah, my concern here is that we would be upzoning this property, giving it significantly more value, and it would be like rewarding bad behavior because they built that structure without permit. Of course, we want the additional housing, but that would be something I would consider when we're looking at asking for additional amenities, is the fact that that they would be getting an upzoning, and it would be based on something that that they had done that was incorrect according to our bylaws. So I do agree with passing this on to the APC, but we'll have some things to say about it when it comes back. Thanks.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, APC.
Councillor Sproul?
You're
Your
muted.
mic's not on. Your microphone isn't on. Are you going to speak?
Yes, pass it on to the APC. That's what I'm saying.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, this is great to see a new rental zone. I had similar concerns about upzoning, but I hear that it is a new owner. And so would that new owner have been informed of the history of the property and that they were purchasing an illegal situation?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. Yeah, absolutely. We were in contact with the owners for quite a bit before they purchased the property. They did their due diligence and looked into that. And we discussed the potential, we discussed their options as well. And I felt, when I advised them, I felt the rental, keeping it rental would keep that, the rentals, would meet our current policies in the OCP for rental housing. More than if we asked for, if they were to rezone it for the potential to sell or stratify it and sell the units. And they weren't interested in that in any case. They really wanted the rental. We talked about whether the mini storage should be tried to get a mixed use zone for mini storage and the fourplex only, and then just legalize what's there. And that certainly maybe been a route that they would have also considered or would still also consider. But then in discussions, both parties felt that having additional rental housing or the possibility for additional rental housing, remember the mini storage will stay for the foreseeable future, but having the potential for additional rental housing and down the road is probably of more value to the village and possibly to the owners, but mini storages are quite profitable potentially too. So yes, we did discuss that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think the keeping it rental, particularly if we can get some, maybe that's the conversation, is a bit of an increase either in the affordability or the number of suites that are affordable for that in trade for that upzone. But yeah, I'm happy to refer it to APC.
Someone like to make the motion?
The council refer the application 2021-01 OCP and RZ for an OCP amendment and rezoning of 2782 Ulverston Avenue, legally described as Lot 1 DL 24 Nelson District Plan 28034, except in part Plan VIP 8213 to the Advisory Planning Commission for a recommendation.
Seconder? Councillor Sproul? Sorry, all in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the heritage alteration permit and variance application 3274 3rd Street 2021-01 HAP report.
Move receipt.
Seconder? Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Okay.
Yes. So I'm happy to share this application with you. It's quite unique and a little bit different, but fits the character of the downtown core and Cumberland really well, I believe. The applicant is proposing to create spaces for small incubator type businesses that might not have the financial means to, rent a whole storefront, or they want to test run their business by creating sort of a mini urban bazaar. I'm probably saying that wrong. At least I didn't say bizarre. But a community urban bazaar, or CUB for short, with three fairly small retail, commercial, artisan commercial type spaces, and a small community stage where there could be some events that could be hosted on that site. A little small community assembly area, quite ample bicycle parking, and also a one accessible parking space in the back of Penrith Avenue. So this proposal would utilize one narrow property, and that's the last property that's still in the VCMU1, and then the neighbor is residential. And part of the existing property, that's where the the community stage would be. That's part of the property that has the Randall's Auto Body on it, and the True Green business. So at this point, it's a referral to the Heritage Committee for comment and a little bit further discussion, and we'll get a little bit further detail from the proponent, and that'll be presented to the Heritage Committee on the stormwater management, those other things that we require. So,
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sproul.
Well, I think this would be an asset to Cumberland. The thing I was thinking of is parking, because I know that street is busy with the brewery. Sorry, I haven't. How many cars do they have to have so many parking spots?
so
Sure.
I can respond to that if you like.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah. So they did put the application in before our zoning bylaw update, so the old rules to apply for parking. Also, though, it's all fairly small retail spaces, and our parking requirements, it's actually quite low for that site. It would just be two spots. One they are putting on site as the accessible one, and then there would just be one other one which they could exercise the parking cash and lieu option for. So the reason it's fairly low is because this actual space is fairly low. So our parking bylaw, parking regulations are for commercial uses are based on the square footage of the commercial space. And that's fairly small because these are fairly small businesses. Or alternatively, they're based on a per employee, but it's 0.25 per employee. So the requirement is fairly low due to that.
Okay. Councillor, I'm going around the table. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, this looks pretty cool. I'm interested in seeing this further.
Okay. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, this is a great idea. I'm just wondering about hoping that they can include some accessibility, and ensure the ground cover is accessible, and maybe permeable and accessible. If I could ask for so much. Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the parking, because if you do have 3 businesses full and they need to load their product in and out, that could be a thing, but I guess they could park elsewhere, or the parking at the front could be angle. But I like the addition of the green space too, and I'm happy to forward it on.
Okay. Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic use of space and revitalization of downtown. That's exactly the type of thing that we're looking for. With COVID, having outdoor market, outdoor space, all the bike parking, it's great. Happy.
And I like the concept that it could be for people that think they want to run a business but aren't quite sure about it. It would be a good area for them to try it and see if they really like it, because I've run into it before where people thought it was a fantastic idea, spent all the money, and then they found out they really didn't care to be doing it. So this could help them in a lot of ways. Awesome. Someone would like to make the motion?
Okay. That council refer the Heritage Alteration Permit and Variance Application 3274 3rd Street 2021-01 HAP report dated March 31st, 2021 to the Heritage Committee for comment, and further that council require that the applicant host an information meeting outdoors or online to provide an opportunity for input on the Heritage Alteration Permit and Variance Application 3274 3rd Street 2021-01 HAP.
Seconded.
sorry, I'm just realizing it's a variance. So do we need to refer it to APC as well?
Sorry, yes, you're right.
But-
I didn't.
So, and further that we refer it to APC as well.
Seconder,
Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan, did you put your hand up again?
Sorry,
Karen?
I did not mention I put in the report, but I didn't outline that there is a variance requested. So it's the reason we didn't refer to the APC at this point. You may, it's fine. Is
Okay.
the APC doesn't has been dealing with parking, requests to parking. The reason we thought staff felt the minimum ground floor to ceiling height variance request really has to do with the character. So it could just go to the Heritage Committee. So that was the reasoning there, that we didn't refer that one to APC. So we haven't automatically referred everything that comes forward in the VCMU1 zone to APC. We've been referring the variances that deal with sort of broader issues, such as parking. So in this case, we felt the floor to ceiling height thing is really more of a character thing. So that's why the recommendation was just to the Heritage Committee.
Yeah, I'm fine to remove the APC if that's the will of council.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I think we can remove that. Oh, I just wanted to, after we're done with this, can we go back to 7.3? Because I actually wanted to refer that to the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee. We only referred it to the APC, and I think that the Homelessness Affordable Housing Committee would have a lot to say about that particular application. So yeah, we can do the vote on this. And then.
Okay. So Rachel, can you read? Oh, no, you don't need to read it. You got that we're removing? It's not coming on. Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so all in favor? 7.4? Carried. Now you want to go back to 7.3?
Yeah. So I'll move that council refer the application of 2021-01 OCP for an OCP amendment and rezoning of 2782 Overson Avenue, legally described as Lot 1, DL24, Nelson District, except part in Plan VIP 8213 to the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee for recommendation.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried.
Thanks.
Next, that council received the 2021 Community Grant Report.
Move receipt.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Council. We advertised the grant program for this year and had a great response. 6 applications plus an inquiry from the Cumberland Community School Society. Staff reviewed the applications, and there were 3 that we considered either didn't really fit in within the guidelines of the program as council had set it out, or the request was beyond the budget of the program, and they were related to COVID response. So we discussed those applications with the applicants and suggested that they be applied to the restart funding, which is a report that's upcoming after this one. But we have given you the information here just so you have a fuller picture of all the applications before you. So the other 4 applications that were a better fit within the program were the Cumberland Community School Parent Association for covered secure bike racks connected to the Active Transportation Program project. The Cumberland Culture and Art Society, which is, I guess, a deferred seed project to improve their administrative functions. The Royal Canadian Legion, and that was the delegation council had out of Oceanside for the housing study, and the Youth and Ecological Restoration Program for to fund a staff member for a project in the community forest. So they're listed, the grants and their requests are listed here in the table, and you'll see there's a 4th column on the right-hand side, where we've provided 70% of the funding request for each of those applicants. And this is just really a basis to start the discussion with council. Council really has full discretion whether to approve or partially approve or not fund any of these applications. So based on the criteria that you put out in the guidelines or outside of that, because council has that discretion to do so. And I'll just quickly mention that staff suggested if there's any remaining funds, one idea is to perhaps give a donation to the Broom Busters, who have done a great deal of work in the community over the years. And that's up to council. I'll leave it with you.
Okay, so we'll go down around the table and Councillor Spruill.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I think I approve of all these grants. I'm interested though, the Legion one, how much is it that we're, oh, so 2,000 we're considering because we're a smaller community. Yeah, I don't know what to say, they seem modest amounts of money, so glad to be able to support them.
Councillor Sullivan?
I just like to thank staff for the suggestion of the 70%. I can't imagine a more equitable way to spread out this grant. And I think it's a fantastic idea to support the Broom Busters. They do great work, obviously, in town, but they've also done really great work at the disc golf course. So if we were to hand them over 600 or 400 bucks, maybe with a little side note telling them that the disc golf course broom has returned. Thanks to staff for such an awesome, this is great, this is the best that it's been yet. It's made it very easy. So thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Kettler?
Yes, thank you to staff. It does make it a lot easier to have that extra column. I was going to ask about the CCS bike rack. Do we know, is the school contributing at all to that, or would we be fully funding that?
I have to take a look through their application to see if they had other contributing
yeah, I didn't see it. I think it is fully funded by us, which, you know, I think it is infrastructure on their property that maybe should be matched funding, but
I did have an email from Dana saying that they would be welcome any portion of the money that they were requesting, that they would find the additional funds.
Okay, thanks. The other thing with the Arts Society, what they're asking for is, you know, help with administration and the governance review, which actually seems more like operations, which is not something we normally fund, but considering COVID and how hard it has been for the arts community, I definitely support giving them that help and getting them to a place where they need to be a functioning society again. I also agree with reducing the amount that we give to the Legion slightly. And supporting the youth ecological restoration. So, but at the 70% rate for all of them, so that we are making our budget, and also the addition of the 375, I believe it is, for the Broom Buster. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna complicate things. So I really like the I really like the youth ecological restoration project. I think that's awesome, and I would like to fully support that. As I would the Cumberland Culture and Arts Society. I think they managed to pull off a festival this year, which is crazy and fabulous, and they could really use some support getting their books and stuff in order. So wanting to support them as fully as possible. I agree that we could, what did I say? I agree that we could give the PAC a bit less. So if we, and also the Legion, I'd actually, I'm not sure, I don't have full confidence in the Legion application, quite frankly. It seems like a very broad scope. And we are a very small community, and I'm just not sure we should be contributing the same amount that like Parksville and Nanaimo are. So I would be more inclined to give them like $1,000, or actually ask them to do Cowichan first and then tell us how that goes, and come back and do the Comox Valley as a second project, so that we could get a more fulsome picture of, because I think that CVRD is the Cowichan, or yeah, CVRD, not Comox Valley. CVRD is not giving $3,000, right?
I think it's the.
Yes, I believe Comox Valley.
Oh, Comox, it is Comox Valley CVRD.
They presented to us as well. Yeah, the veterans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, money from all of them, us.
Yeah. So I just think that could be prorated a little for our size and scope. That's all. So 3,000 to youth ecological restoration, 2,000 to the PAC, 1,000 to the Legion, and 4,000 to Cumberland Community Arts. Did I add that up right? 2, 5, 6. Sorry. What did I say? Let's do it again. 3,000 to YER, and 2,000 to the PAC, and 1,000 to the Legion, and 4,000 10. That's 10.
Well, I want to thank you for your input. I am going with what staff presented to us. I think they're all amazing projects. I'd like to see us fund them at 70%, all of them. The Cumberland Community Schools, the bikes would be amazing to have. And the Cumberland Culture Center, anything we could do. I read their initial report too, and it talks about the Weird Church and how they will help them and do all the other things that they want to do. I believe that there is a need from the Legion for their report, and I think we need to pay our way. We're not going to give them the whole 3,000. And the youth and ecological restoration, Wendy Catilla has always done amazing projects, and she will continue to do them. So I support what the staff have presented, and especially the Broom Busters. They do an awesome job. I don't know if anybody's ever donated to them, so this could be a first. So that's the way I feel about the projects.
New broom clippers for everyone.
Well, you know that the organizer, takes them and stores them every year and gets them all sharpened and everything. And there must be a cost to that, but you never see that anywhere in anything. So yes, absolutely. So what is your pleasure, council?
I'll move that council allocate 70% to the applications that have not been referred to the COVID-19 Restart funding, and that the remainder, I believe it's 375, go to Broom Busters.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next we have okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, that council received the COVID-19 Restart Fund program. Motion. Second. All in favor? Carried. You've been patient, Kaylin.
Oh, yes. Well, no shortage of interesting conversation this evening. So, and I also want to acknowledge maybe Councillor Sullivan might have been a bit early with the thank you because he didn't get through both grant reports quite yet. So what I have in front of you is follow up to the last report that was provided by Michelle in March around the restart funding and how council can apply it kind of moving forward. And what this report essentially is a list of ideas and projects that we think can support the village through COVID and is a good use of these restart funds. Acknowledging that many of them, especially the project type ideas, are still very conceptual and that there be a little bit more work. So if council is interested to provide direction for us to go and do a bit more work and understanding exactly what the cost and lift of these types of things are. But also, as Rachel pointed out, there's 3 other grants in the other grant section here that originally applied into the community grant and aid program. And we felt that are better suited here because they're more impacted by COVID and restart related. You can see there within your recommendations, I've provided some kind of specifics around those grants with amounts of money. And the other ones are a bit more general. So if we want to explore them, we're going to need council's direction to go ahead and do that. So just quickly, I've broken it down into broad fields, village operations, things that we can do. And you can see there in a bit of the caveat about that, acknowledging that we're not out of the COVID pandemic yet. And that we're still going to have some challenges as we move forward. So keeping that in mind, we know we're doing things like IT improvements and our office renovations, and those are going to bring some new challenges around cleaning and custodial and other types of energies we might need. So keeping that in mind as part of this restart funding, that we're going to have future obligations or ideas as well. So under village operations, we have things like a corporate communication strategy. And as it kind of describes in there, that's us as staff having a policy or a guideline on how we communicate with the public, how we use certain tools, be it social media, or even just within our reporting and how that is done. And that's a way that we can think, especially with COVID, what we've learned is there's work that we can do to better communicate with our community. And that's sort of what that communications background, that communication strategy will provide, is that foundational piece on how we do that type of work. And then secondly, there you have the recreation revenue loss. And as Michelle pointed out in the last report, there is other areas where that funding could be covered. And so council's direction on how to make up for that revenue loss would be appreciated. Next, we have some what I've kind of lumped into downtown improvements. We have more of a temporary idea project that we're working on. I've engaged with the owners of some of the empty lots in our community, especially in the downtown core, and talked to them about putting kind of what we've done in Village Square, more picnic tables, more spaces for people to space out in our downtown and find comfortable spots where they are physically distanced. And that would, ideas like the King George parking lot, the Ilo parking lot. And certainly I've noticed people really like to sit under the trees in front of the cultural center, in front of the museum, and maybe adding a few more picnic tables in these areas will give us a bit more of a sense of safety and security in our community during COVID. And then thirdly, we get into these other community grants. And these are ones, again, that applied into the community grant and aid program. And we felt that they're better dressed here. Notably being the first one being the CCSS Community Food Share Program. And you can see there they've come up with a bit of a shortfall for the revenue for the 2021. And the amounts that are provided there is what would be required of them to complete their service through 2021. Secondly, and kind of related to food security in our community especially, is the Comox Farmers Market Association couponing and healthy nutrition. And what it really does is allows community members and families in our communities that fight with potentially food challenges and food security issues, allows them to access locally grown healthy food. It sort of lowers that price for them. And also it allows them a source of food in our community without a big grocery store on weekends, that they can access the farmers market and get food from them if they may have mobility issues or otherwise. So they've asked for just over $5,000 in order to expand that program to include 20 more families within our community. And that's what that amount would provide, is 20 more families that have access to couponing and access to our farmers market here in Cumberland. And thirdly is the CBA and the Cumberland Business Association. You know, this one is close to me. Very proud of the work that they've been doing. You know, they submitted an application into the grant and aid program. And what they're looking for is it kind of blends over, and it's really that first step of the MOU that we've been working towards. And what they're asking for is a bit of extra capacity support so that we can continue to do that work. They've done some great work lately. You've probably noticed with their social media and otherwise. They asked within their community grant and aid program an application for $4,500 to $6,000, which would hire them and then help them hire an executive director. And to me, this is a very important piece of an organization. It provides one, capacity at the leadership level, and two, objective leadership that represent the interests of all their members. And for our community, if we're going to provide them financial support as a municipality, we're going to make sure that whatever monies we give them is reaching all their members and creating benefit for every one of their members equally. So earmarking funding towards things like an executive director really meets that demand. And then we're putting money into a place where they can create equal support for all community members. And what I've noticed in my acknowledge my plan is I'm recommending that the funding goes towards them of $10,000 this year for their operational funding. And this funding will be replaced next year through a licensing program. And it'll be self-funding through the monies that we receive through the licensing renewals. But this will just allow us to give a bit more capacity, allow the CBA to have a bit more capacity to work with me towards that MOU and finalizing that agreement, among all the other great work that they've been doing. And so finally, in the fourth section is around community spaces. And I know we just talked about this. I think this kind of bleeds into potentially the PAC and their active transportation and their bike racks. But this is also around that outdoor shelter that we saw the PAC come forward and propose. And so there's a preliminary and estimated budget there for that type of work. But there's also lots of opportunities, you know, and with our childcare grant that's out, should we be successful, that we can probably meet a lot of these demands or a lot of these interests, these partnership opportunities through other projects like that. So other than that, I've given you a bit of a summary of what's been spent to date with a list of, you know, what we have in this report and what that would mean to the bottom line if applied. Again, I think the grant ones are a bit more straightforward. You've heard directly from the applicants on the values that they're seeking. And for those other ones, we probably have to get your direction to go do a bit more investigative work on them. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Kettler, start with you.
Thanks for the report, Kaylin. That's great. Yeah, I'm really happy that we got this restart money because, man, we'd be in a bad spot if we didn't. And yeah, it's nice to be able to help people. I don't think that we will be able to help them at the same level in future years, but I'm glad that we can this year. And I really don't have any issue with what's been put forward. You know, the upgrades to our own facilities and revenue losses and the replacement of those funds to general reserve from recreation. I think that's all good. Yeah, I agree with all of them. I really appreciate all the work of CCSS and Weird Church on the food share program. That's been just so amazing for our community, and definitely support the token program for the farmers market. Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about the CBA, the Business Association, supporting themselves in future years. You know, much like the Arts Council, I think, you know, we can fund their operations and employee to get them set up and get them on the right track, but we wouldn't want to sustain that operation funding. Although I'm sure they'll have something to say about that when we discuss our MOU further. And I would love to see that outdoor shelter for the community on you know, to be used for outdoor schooling and to be used by the community for other purposes, I think it would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Muted. Yeah, thanks so much, Kellen. This is really great. It's so fun to have a pool of money appear to get to do some really important work. So yeah, I totally agree with the CBA. I think this is a necessary bridge to getting them core funding via a service or a MOU of some kind. And obviously I support the coupon program in all its ways, and the food share. We're giving them the 35, yes. That's right, okay, because it says 25 to 35. So yeah, I'd like to see them get the full 35 for that. And yeah, I love all the other ideas, especially the ambassador, to tell people not to go to the potholes because they're not there in the summer, and to help answer all the questions at the kiosk at the bottom there, because every day now when I go in the forest, I'm answering someone's question about where they need to go, or where the bathroom is, or where the potholes are, or whatever. So I love that idea, and employing youth in the community would be great. There's a signage thing in here somewhere, and I'm scrolling and I can't find it, but I would love to see some money toward just immediate, like even an addition, and we can work with UROC around it. We heard at the village hall around what's it called, the protocols for trail usage, developing some signage around that, I think would be really helpful in preparation for our crazy busy season. And having attended their AGM recently and hearing the 167,000 people that came into our trail system last year, and expecting that will only increase this year, I expect that we will need that as soon as possible. So I'd like to also work that into the something here. Yeah, and I think outdoor seating is a really important addition to the community as well. And I would like to see that partnered with some mechanism to deal with the hopefully not garbage, but compostable takeout containers. So I don't know how whether does our business community put out compost?
Well, that's an interesting thing. So we don't have commercial pickup of compost in our community.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that we can't solve that problem, because the business people have solved that problem. You know, they use farmers, and so there is ways that we can make it work. You know, and I agree. And thanks for reminding me, Councillor Brown. There was a page I forgot, and that had the village signs on it and the summer student employment. So just for the summer student employment, it's 100% funding for the role and the position. It's through like a rec and outdoor. And so we've just put a little bit of money aside if we were to go after that and hire a student, that we could give them some resources to do their job aside from that. And so we'll need to look in. That was fresh, brand new. We'll have to have a good look at it. I'll work with Kevin to see what that type of role, but that tourism rec trails ambassador role might be something that we'd be happy to look at. And, you know, I have it as a welcome sign, but really when I've talked about it, wayfinding signs in our community, I know we've started it. And it could be for the trails, but it could also just simply be letting you know where our public parking spots are, and then that kind of stuff, and different ways of getting at it as well. So I agree. All these things will help. We just with your direction, we'll dig into them a little bit further.
Sullivan.
In the interest of time, I agree with everybody, and I have more than enough thanks for you, Kaylin, and all the staff with this awesome grant report as well. Yeah, and just to touch on what Councillor Kettler said, it's really nice to be able to provide the funding for these guys, but definitely we have to be looking to the future, because, you know, I don't know if we're gonna have another 35 grand for the food share. So it's super awesome that we were able to help these organizations the way we can this year. It's very exciting to get the big pot of money. So I hope we continue to use it the best we can and support these recommendations. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, and you know, one of the motivations, or not motivations, but directing some of these grant applications into this restart is acknowledging that the special circumstances we're in. And hopefully we don't get 35 grand next year because COVID's over. And then the businesses don't need it either. And we can get back to just being a community again. So thank you for that.
Councillor Sproul?
Okay, sorry. Oh, Christ, what happened?
You're on.
Oh, I'm on. Sorry, I can see the red. Never mind. Yeah, this is an amazing spreadsheet. This has taken a lot of time, and I thank you. Is it Kaylin who put that together? I mean,
I built off Michelle's work. I cannot.
Well, it's wonderful to see that we have ways now, financial ways to share at this time, and we can be generous. And I'm touched by the humanity of this council, that we think of feeding the people and helping the businesses, and that's not something that happens every day in councils. So it's great to have this opportunity.
Okay. I'm waiting for you, Kaylin. Okay, I have two requests that I would like to add. One is I would like to see solar put on our Welcome to Cumberland sign out on the highway.
I've heard stories about the solar on the welcome sign.
You drive by at night, you don't even see it.
Yeah.
And it needs to be shown, because that attracts people into our community. To be able
I think I need to call Jason at Hackeye Energy. And I think maybe we may not even, there's a shorter cut to doing that. And I think we can certainly look into that.
Thank you very much.
And sorry, Mayor, if I may, just before, I mean, one of these things I know talked to Clayton with, we have a committee of the whole coming up. So if there's anything like that you guys want to apply here, I can bring it back to committee of the whole and give us a bit more time to have a fulsome conversation with it.
Okay. And there was only one more, and that was flagpoles.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the downtown core, I imagine.
Pardon?
In the downtown core.
No, in the municipal hall.
In the municipal hall, okay.
Okay, we need to replace the ones that we have.
Okay.
They're not safe for public works to be up there doing them. Okay.
Yep. On my list.
So we need, everybody seems to be very happy, and I'm certainly happy with everything that you've done here. You've obviously been listened to council and know what we were wanting to do. So thank you very much for listening to us. And so you want to say something?
Nope. No, I want your recommendation.
Okay, so someone like to make the motion?
Sure, I'll move that council allocate COVID-19 restart funding through funding agreements to the following organizations: $35,000 to the Cumberland Community School Society for the food share program as specified by council, $5,400 to the Comox Valley Farmers Market for the food coupon program, $10,000 to the Cumberland Business Association for continued startup, and 2021 operating funds.
Second. Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the Coal Hills BMX license of occupation report.
Move, received.
Second, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you, council. So the BMX license expired, I believe, in October, and we've been working to get this back to you. It's basically the same license as we've had the previous term, but there's a couple of changes that I'd like to highlight. One discussion we had with Coal Hills is the shared parking area, and you'll see on page 260, the hatched area was the parking area where the club had a non-exclusive license. When the village wasn't using that land, they could use that area for camping and parking. And what we're proposing in the new license is to remove the top area above the gates, and the club's agreeable to that. But the area below on the left in orange, The village would like to remove that from the license. The club has asked that they retain it for use, to use as camping without a park use permit. So, and the reason the village would like to remove it, just because the increased use of the park by the community and generally the increased use of the park with the off-leash dog park and the bike jump, what's it called? The bike jump park. There's just that increased use, and having camping there without a park use permit. It's not a conflict, but there's an impact there. So the club would still be able to use it, but would need that park use permit, which would need an application and a fee of $50 to use that space for camping. The next change is winter closure. We've changed the license so the club can close the park to the public between November and February, I believe. And that's a similar practice as we're doing in the jump park as well. Section 4.6 requires that the club get a fire permit if they're going to have any campfires on the property. They have to have that permit through the fire chief. And notice of cancellation, the club requested an increase in the village's requirement to cancel the license. It was 3 months. It had been 3 months for some time. The reason why they wanted to ensure that they are able to complete a race season. So we're suggesting a 6-month official notice period. It's very likely that the village would have earlier conversations with the club about any change, or especially in relation to the use of the covenant for the development of Lot 9B. We expect that those subdivision applications do take considerable time to process. So there would, especially in that case, there would be earlier conversations about that arrangement. So we're asking for council to approve the license with those recommendations from staff. Thank you.
Someone like to move that motion, or if they have any questions?
No, I'll move that motion.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried.
May I just ask, I know it hasn't been decided, but I've been living with this trilogy business and you know, this the subdivision and development thing, but I still don't understand who is supposed to find the land. Trilogy will rebuild, but I mean, it's not the time to talk about it, but I mean, since 2008, this has been in all the language, and
it still is in the language, and it will remain there until there's a change.
Okay.
Okay. Next, we're going into council reports, and Councillor Sproul.
We need to make a motion. 9:02.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to speed us up a bit here. Yes, please make a motion. Please make the motion. I thought we voted on it.
Oh, yeah.
No.
For 9 o'clock.
No, the motion to continue past 9.
Yes. Do you want to continue, or do you want to stop?
Do you want me to answer what I really think? Or
honestly?
Yeah.
We can if you want. We can if you want.
But what are the alternatives? Because we have like another 40 minutes to go here, or it seems like, or half.
We've got another page in a bit.
Well, I've got a in camera.
Just a minute.
In camera.
No, just a minute. Yes. Clayton, what is your advice?
If council wishes to extend, you know, possibly the council reports could just be received, and I would recommend that we, based on the chief financial officer, that the tax bylaw is or that report is actually received by council as well. That is a bit timely if possible.
How,
So I'll move that we extend the meeting to finish the items on the agenda.
Second.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried.
And that we just received the report, our council reports.
Yes. Seconder?
Second.
All in
It
favor?
covered almost my whole report.
Okay. Okay. Next, we have the recommended council receive the 2021 property tax rates bylaw report.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, council. I'll keep it brief, as you've seen this each year for the past part of your terms. I just want to point out that the tax rate bylaw must be adopted before May 15th. You've already adopted the financial plan, which is another requirement, so you're fine there. And the increase is a little bit less for the residential single family and strata units than what was brought to you in the fall. Because of the parcel tax that was decreased, and also those requisitions from the CVRD that was less than what I was expecting. However, the commercial properties, the other classes, class 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are all going to go to pre-COVID times. So we will do our best to communicate that and make sure that those properties are aware that that the increase is due to the fact that they're not being subsidized on their school taxes anymore. So it's important that everyone understands that, because they would have only seen about a $400 increase because of the fire hall debt, but they're actually it's going to be over $1,000 probably to go back up. They also won't be getting deferred deadline this year. And I also just gave you a little bit of a comparison on page 291 of what other organizations charged in 2020. And if they all decided to increase by 2% and we kept our 4.5 or so percent, then there's a little bit of comparison for that as well. And so what I'm asking for tonight is if council could give first, second, and third reading to the tax rate bylaw. Thank you.
So who would like to do that?
I'll do it. Thanks, Michelle. That's amazing. I'll move that council give first, second, and third reading to 2021 property tax bylaw number 1148, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. There's no new business, notice, motions, and announcements, none. Question period. Please send questions by email to info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. Please note it's only questions. And while we're waiting, I've just got two things I would like to say. And I would like to acknowledge the passing of Prince Philip, and he will be sadly missed by many people and in this country, and we acknowledge that. The other thing I would like to speak about is the vaccine rollout. I've talked to a number of Cumberland residents who've been out and had their shots, and they are so excited and so happy to finally get to this point of getting their shots. And it's very positive. And when you go, you don't see large lineups. The appointments are staggered so that you only have a 5-minute wait before you're in the room, and you stay for 15 minutes and you leave. So it seems to be progressing quite well. And now we wait another minute and then.
Have you got your shot yet, Leslie, or you're on the list? I got mine for next week. Saturday.
My husband
Oh,
goes tomorrow. I chose not to go when he was going.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Rachel?
We have no questions so far.
Okay, thank you very much. If you would move to go into closed meeting.
Oh. Okay. Right.
I'll move that council close the meeting to consider pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Information that is prohibited or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Good night.